Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The file reached me on the morning of October 11th. The brown manila envelope was slightly damp around the edges and simply read, "Missing Persons, Olympia Area." Inside were 3 names: Daniel Morrison, Rachel Voss, Emma Hartley. 3 hikers. They had last been seen 10 days ago near Hurricane Ridge. I worked in the Behavioral Analysis Unit at the Seattle office and usually handled complex violent crime cases. Missing persons files were typically handled by park rangers or local sheriffs. However, this file had a special note: unusual elements present. Review required. I am Special Agent Marcus Webb. I have been with the FBI for 12 years, 8 of them in the Behavioral Analysis Unit. I know which cases look strange. This case didn't just look strange. This case felt wrong. When I opened the file, the first thing I saw were 3 passport photos. Daniel, 32, software developer from Portland. Glasses, calm expression. Rachel, 29, environmental researcher from Seattle. Bright smile, the kind that made you think she loved her work. Emma, 26, graduate student in geology. Serious eyes, tied-back hair. They'd met through a hiking forum online. Planned a 4-day trek through the Olympic National Forest, moderate difficulty, well-marked trails. All 3 were experienced hikers. All 3 had proper equipment, emergency beacons, satellite phones. They'd filed their route plan with the ranger station before departing. Day 1 went fine. They checked in via satellite phone at 6 p.m., reported reaching their first campsite without incident. Day 2, same thing. Checkpoint at noon, everything normal. Day 3, morning check-in at 9 a.m. Rachel's voice on the recording, cheerful, saying they'd found an amazing viewpoint and were taking photos. Then nothing. When they missed their 6 p.m. check-in on day 3, rangers weren't immediately concerned. Phone batteries die, people lose track of time. But when they missed the morning check-in on day 4 and the emergency beacon never activated, search and rescue mobilized. Rangers found their campsite on day 5. 3 tents, perfectly arranged. Sleeping bags inside, still laid out. Cooking equipment clean and organized. Food stores properly secured in bare containers. No signs of struggle. No blood, no indication of animal activity. The hikers had simply vanished. That's when things got unusual. All 3 had been wearing personal action cameras, the kind that record continuously and upload to cloud storage when they sync. Rangers recovered the cameras from the abandoned campsite. 2 were turned off. 1, Emma's camera, was still recording. The footage showed 4 hours of the interior of her tent. Nothing moved. No sound except wind against fabric. Just 4 hours of empty tent. Camera pointing at the entrance flap. Then, at the 3-hour 47-minute mark, a sound. A voice. Male, middle-aged. Clear and distinct despite no visible source. "They're waiting in the red trees." That was it. 1 sentence. Then silence for the remaining 13 minutes of footage. I played it back 5 times in my office. Same voice, same words, same clarity. No distortion, no background noise that would explain a radio transmission or distant hiker. The voice sounded like someone standing directly next to the camera, but Emma's tent had been empty. I checked the other cameras. Daniel's showed normal hiking footage until it was turned off at their second campsite. Rachel's showed similar content, shut off at the same time. Only Emma's kept recording, and only Emma's captured that voice. I pulled up the ranger reports. Sergeant Dawson had led the initial search. His notes were professional but included an odd detail. Thermal imaging sweep of search area revealed anomalous heat signature approximately 1.2 miles northeast of campsite. Signature appeared human-shaped but dissipated when approached. Secondary sweep found nothing. Heat signatures that disappear when you get close. Voices on cameras with no source. 3 experienced hikers vanishing without trace. I closed the file, picked up my phone, called my supervisor. "I'm taking the Olympia case," I said. "Thought you might," he replied. "Rangers requested our help. They don't like how this one feels. Neither do I." "When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning. I want to walk that trail myself, see the campsite, understand what they experienced." "Webb," my supervisor said, voice careful. "The anomalous elements in this case. You know those don't usually have rational explanations." "They always have explanations," I said. "We just don't always like them." I spent the rest of that day reviewing every document in the file. Weather reports showed clear conditions throughout the hikers' trek. No storms, no sudden temperature drops, nothing environmental that would explain their disappearance. Wildlife activity in the area was normal. No recent bear sightings, no cougar tracks, no reason to think predators were involved. The sat phone record showed their last transmission originated from the coordinates they'd provided. The emergency beacon had never been activated, which meant either they'd experienced something so sudden they couldn't trigger it, or they'd chosen not to trigger it. Neither option made sense. I pulled up maps of the search area. The Olympic National Forest covers nearly 1 million acres of wilderness. The section where the hikers vanished was remote, but not inaccessible. Rangers knew it well. Popular trails ran through it. People hiked there year-round without incident. Until now. At 6 p.m., I locked my office and drove home through Seattle traffic. Rain had started, typical October weather, turning the city gray and slick. I lived alone in a small apartment in Queen Anne, just me and case files and too much coffee. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about that voice on the recording. They're waiting in the red trees. Not, "I'm waiting." Not, "someone's waiting." They're waiting, plural, specific. And what were red trees? Olympic National Forest had evergreens, Douglas fir, western hemlock, Sitka spruce, none of them red, not naturally. At 2 a.m., I got up, made coffee, pulled up satellite imagery of the search area on my laptop. The forest canopy was dense, old growth, virtually impenetrable from above. But I zoomed in on the coordinates where the thermal anomaly had been detected, the place northeast of their campsite. The imagery showed normal forest. Green canopy, no clearings, no structures. Nothing unusual. I switched to historical imagery, checking previous years. Same view, same dense forest. I went back 5 years, 10 years, all identical. Then I tried filtering the image, adjusting color balance, looking for anything that might stand out. Most of the forest showed as expected, various shades of green and brown, but there was a section, small, maybe a quarter-mile across, where the color was slightly off. Not red exactly. More like the green had a reddish tint, subtle enough you'd never notice without specifically looking for it. And that section was centered exactly where the thermal anomaly had appeared. I sat back, stared at the screen. Red trees. My phone rang at 6 a.m. Sergeant Dawson from Olympic National Forest Ranger Station. "Agent Webb? Hope I didn't wake you." "I was up. What's wrong?" "Maybe nothing, maybe something. We had another hiker report something odd last night. Solo backpacker, experienced guy, was camping about 3 miles from where your missing persons vanished. He called in on his sat phone around midnight, said he heard voices in the forest. Multiple voices, all saying the same thing over and over. My chest tightened. What were they saying? "They're waiting in the red trees," over and over for about 10 minutes. Then silence. He said the voices sounded like they were coming from everywhere and nowhere. Said it scared him enough that he packed up in the dark and hiked out. We picked him up at the trailhead this morning. Is he still there? Yeah, shaken up but coherent. Says he's hiked these woods for 20 years and never experienced anything like it. I'm leaving Seattle now. I'll be there in 3 hours. I threw clothes in a bag, grabbed my go pack with field equipment, and was on the road by 6:30. The drive west from Seattle to the Olympic Peninsula takes you through increasingly remote country. Suburbs give way to small towns, then to forest that seems to go on forever. I reached the ranger station at 9:45 a.m. Sergeant Dawson met me in the parking lot, a weathered man in his 50s with the kind of face that had spent decades in outdoor work. We shook hands. "The hiker's name is Tom Brennan," Dawson said. "He's pretty rattled. Been doing coffee and not much else since we brought him in. Can I talk to him? That's why I called you." Tom Brennan sat in a conference room nursing a paper cup, staring at nothing. He looked like he was in his 40s, fit, with the lean build of someone who spent serious time on trails. When I introduced myself, his eyes focused on me with an intensity that suggested he very much needed someone to believe what he was about to say. "Tell me what happened," I said, sitting across from him. He took a breath. "I set up camp around sunset, maybe 7 o'clock. Standard site, nothing unusual. Made dinner, hung my food, got in my tent around 9. I was reading, just relaxing when I heard it. The voices. Yeah, started faint, like wind through trees. But then I realized it wasn't wind, it was words, same words repeated. They're waiting in the red trees. Over and over, different voices, all saying the exact same thing with the exact same rhythm. How many voices? Hard to say, at least a dozen, maybe more. They overlapped, like a round, you know? One would start, then another would join in, then another. All saying the same thing. Could you tell where they were coming from?" He shook his head. "That's what was wrong about it. The sound came from everywhere, not from a direction, not from multiple directions. From everywhere simultaneously, like the forest itself was speaking. What did you do?" I stayed in my tent for about 5 minutes, trying to rationalize it. Radio interference, other hikers playing a prank, echoes from some weird acoustic effect. But it kept going. Same words, same pattern. So I unzipped my tent and looked outside. "What did you see?" "Nothing. Empty campsite, dark forest, normal night. But the voices were louder outside the tent, much louder. And they were coming from the northeast, I think. There was a quality to the sound in that direction, like it was pulling me." "Pulling you?" I know how that sounds. But yeah, it felt like the voices wanted me to follow them. Like they were calling specifically to me. And Agent Webb, I'm not a superstitious person. I'm a geology professor. I deal in rocks and evidence and things I can measure. But standing there in the dark with those voices all around me, I knew with absolute certainty that if I followed them, I wouldn't come back. "So you left." I packed up my gear in maybe 10 minutes, didn't even take down the tent properly, just stuffed everything in my pack and started hiking. Used my headlamp and GPS, got to the trailhead around 3 in the morning. Rangers found me at the parking lot at dawn. I studied him. No signs of deception, no inconsistency in his story. Just a frightened man reporting something he couldn't explain. "The missing hikers," I said. "Do you think they heard the same voices? I'd bet my tenure on it. And I think they followed them." After speaking with Tom Brennan, I met with Sergeant Dawson and his team to plan my approach. They'd assembled detailed maps of the search area, marking the original campsite, the location of the thermal anomaly, and Tom's camping spot from last night. All three locations formed a rough triangle, with the reddish-tinted forest section I'd seen in satellite imagery at the approximate center. "I want to visit the original campsite first," I said. "Then work northeast toward where the thermal signature was detected." Dawson nodded. "I'll assign 2 rangers to accompany you." "Actually, I'd prefer to go alone." He frowned. "That's against protocol. We don't send people into search areas solo, especially not in cases like this." "I understand. But if there's something in those woods that's affecting people, I want to experience it the same way the missing hikers did. Adding other people changes the dynamic. Agent Webb, with respect, that's how we end up with 4 missing persons instead of 3. I'll maintain radio contact, check in every hour. If I miss a check-in, you can track my GPS and send a team, but I need to do this alone." Dawson clearly didn't like it, but he understood the logic. "All right, but you're carrying 3 separate GPS trackers, 2 radios, and an emergency beacon that I'm personally monitoring. And if I don't hear from you every 60 minutes, I'm sending everyone I have." "Fair enough." I spent an hour prepping equipment. GPS units, radios, emergency beacon, water, food, first aid kit, thermal imaging monocular, audio recorder, camera. I also brought something unusual, an EMF detector, the kind paranormal investigators use. I'm not a believer in ghosts, but electromagnetic anomalies can explain a lot of strange experiences, and I wanted data on everything. At 1 p.m. I started the hike. The trail was well maintained, winding through old-growth forest that made you feel small. Trees, hundreds of years old, rose like cathedral columns, filtering sunlight into green-tinted shadows. The forest floor was thick with ferns and moss. Everything smelled of damp earth and decay and life. I reached the campsite at 2:30 p.m. The ranger team had left it mostly undisturbed after their initial investigation. 3 tents still stood, looking abandoned but intact. I approached slowly, documenting everything with my camera. The site felt wrong immediately. Not obviously wrong, not dangerously wrong, just subtly off in a way I couldn't articulate. Like the air pressure was slightly different, or the quality of sound had changed. I checked my EMF detector. Normal readings. Temperature was consistent with the rest of the forest. No obvious environmental factors that would explain the feeling. I entered Emma's tent, the one where her camera had captured that voice. Her sleeping bag was still laid out. Her pack sat in the corner, contents organized. Everything suggested she'd planned to return. I set up my own audio recorder in the same position where her camera had been, facing the tent entrance. Then I sat down to wait. At 3 p.m., I radioed Dawson. "First check-in. I'm at the original campsite. Everything's quiet." "Copy that. Any observations?" "Nothing concrete, just a feeling. Something about this place is off." "Trust that feeling, Webb. These woods can be strange." I spent the next hour examining every inch of the campsite. No signs of struggle, no blood, no torn fabric, no indication of violence. The hikers' possessions were all accounted for except for what they would have been carrying: water bottles, cameras, their phones. At 3:47 p.m., my audio recorder picked up something. I was outside Daniel's tent when I heard it through my earpiece. The same voice from Emma's recording, same tone, same words. "They're waiting in the red trees." I ran back to Emma's tent. The recorder was still running, LED indicator blinking normally. I checked the timestamp. The voice had occurred at exactly 3:47 p.m., the same timestamp from Emma's recording. Not the same time of day necessarily, but the same minute and second mark. 3:47. I played it back. Crystal clear, male voice, no background noise, exactly like the original recording. I checked my EMF detector, still normal. Checked temperature. Normal. I looked around the tent. Empty, except for me and the equipment. But someone had spoken. The recording proved it. I radioed Dawson. I just got the same voice Emma's camera captured. Exact same words, same timestamp, 3:47. Silence on the other end. Then, "Say again?" The voice from Emma's recording just repeated on my audio recorder. Same phenomenon, same timing. "Webb, are you okay? Any signs of disorientation?" "I'm fine, thinking clearly. The recording is clean. I'm sending you the file now." I transmitted the audio via satellite uplink. Waited while Dawson listened on his end. "Jesus," he said quietly. "That's identical. Which means whatever caused it isn't random. It's repeating on a pattern. Same time mark, possibly same daily time, same message. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I need to move northeast toward where you detected that thermal signature. If the voices are trying to direct people somewhere, that's probably where." "Webb, maybe you should return to base. Regroup, bring more equipment." "Not yet. I'm following this while it's active." I packed my gear, marked the campsite location on my GPS, and started hiking northeast. The terrain got rougher immediately. No trails here, just virgin forest, dense underbrush, and deadfall that made progress slow. At 4:15 p.m., I radioed my second check-in. "Moving northeast through rough terrain. Progress slow, but steady. Copy. We're tracking your GPS. You're heading toward the thermal anomaly zone. That's the plan. Be careful, Webb. That area feels wrong even on the map." I pushed through thick ferns, climbed over fallen logs, navigated around dense thickets. The forest seemed to resist my progress, not actively, but through sheer density. Every 50 feet required effort. At 4:47 p.m., my EMF detector spiked. The reading jumped from baseline to nearly redline in seconds. I stopped, checked the device. It was functioning normally, but detecting strong electromagnetic fluctuations coming from somewhere ahead. I pulled out my thermal monocular, scanned the area in front of me. At first, nothing unusual, just normal forest temperature patterns. Then I saw it. About 200 feet ahead, partially obscured by trees, was a heat signature. Human-shaped, standing motionless, facing in my direction. I lowered the monocular, looked with my naked eyes, nothing there. Raised the monocular again. The signature was still there, clearer now. Definitely human-shaped, but the temperature was wrong. Too uniform. No variation between core body and extremities. No hot spots that would indicate a living person. I started toward it slowly. The EMF readings increased with each step. At 100 feet, the signature was clearly visible in the thermal scope. At 50 feet, I could see details. Human height, human proportions, standing perfectly still. At 25 feet, I lowered the monocular and looked directly at where the signature should be. Empty forest. Nothing there. I raised the monocular. The signature was gone. I scanned left, right, behind me. No heat signatures except my own. Whatever I'd been approaching had vanished the moment I looked directly at it. I checked my GPS, marked the location. I was now in the exact center of the reddish-tinted area I'd seen in satellite imagery. The EMF detector was still showing elevated readings, fluctuating between high and extreme. "Dawson, I've reached the thermal anomaly zone," I radioed. "I'm detecting strong EMF fluctuations, and I just saw a heat signature that disappeared when I approached." "Copy. Are you in any danger?" "I don't think so, but something's here, something that doesn't want to be seen directly." "Explain." The heat signature was visible through thermal imaging, but not to the naked eye. When I got close enough to see it directly, it vanished. It's like whatever's here exists in a wavelength we can detect, but not perceived normally. A static on the radio, then, "Webb, that doesn't make sense." "I know. I'm documenting everything, continuing northeast. Next check-in at 5:15. Copy." I pushed deeper into the anomaly zone. The forest here felt different, darker somehow, though the canopy density wasn't any greater. Quieter, though I couldn't identify what sounds were missing. Wrong. At 5:10 p.m., I found the first red tree. It stood alone in a small clearing, a Douglas fir maybe 80 feet tall. But the bark was wrong. Instead of the normal gray-brown, it had a deep reddish tint, like rust or dried blood. The color wasn't painted on or caused by disease. It seemed to come from within the wood itself, like the tree had absorbed something that changed its fundamental nature. I approached carefully, touched the bark. It felt normal, rough, dry, organic, but the color was unmistakable. Red. I looked around the clearing. 3 more trees showed the same coloration. 4 red trees forming a loose square around a central space maybe 20 feet across. In the center of that space, the ground was disturbed. Not recently, but not long ago either. The forest floor there had been compressed, like multiple people had stood or moved around in a confined area. I pulled out my camera, started documenting. Red trees, disturbed ground, GPS coordinates. I was taking my 5th photo when I heard it. Footsteps. Not my own. Coming from behind me, from the forest I'd just walked through. Multiple sets of footsteps, moving in unison, approaching at a steady pace. I turned, hand on my sidearm. "Federal agent, identify yourself." The footsteps continued. Closer now. Maybe 30 feet away. I could hear them clearly. 3 distinct sets, moving together through underbrush. But I couldn't see anyone. I pulled out my thermal monocular, scanned the direction of the sound. 3 heat signatures, human-shaped, walking toward me in a line. "Stop right there," I called out. "Show yourselves." The signatures kept coming, 20 feet now. I could hear branches breaking under their feet, ferns rustling as they pushed through. Still nothing visible to my naked eye. 10 feet. The footsteps were right in front of me. I was looking directly at where the thermal signatures showed 3 people standing, but all I saw was empty forest. Then one of them spoke. "They're waiting in the red trees." Rachel's voice. I recognized it from the sat phone recordings, but the tone was wrong. Flat, emotionless, like she was reading words without understanding them. "Rachel Voss," I said, "can you hear me?" "They're waiting in the red trees." Daniel's voice this time. Same flat delivery. "Daniel Morrison? Emma Hartley? If you can hear me, I'm FBI. I'm here to help you." "They're waiting in the red trees." Emma's voice. All 3 signatures stood motionless now, arranged in a line directly in front of me. Through the thermal scope I could see them clearly. Normal human body temperature, normal proportions, but invisible to normal sight. "Where are you?" I asked. "What happened to you?" "They're waiting in the red trees." All 3 voices together, perfectly synchronized. Then they turned and walked away, moving back into the forest. I followed, pushing through undergrowth, trying to keep the thermal signatures in view. They moved faster than seemed possible through such dense terrain, gliding between trees without hesitation. After 50 feet, they stopped. I stopped too, breathing hard from the effort of keeping up. Through the thermal monocular I could see them standing together, facing something I couldn't see. Their heat signatures flickered, became unstable. Then, one by one, they faded. Rachel first, her signature dimming like a light on a rheostat. Then Daniel, then Emma. Within 10 seconds, all 3 were gone. I lowered the monocular. The forest was silent. No footsteps, no voices, No indication anyone had been there. I checked my GPS. I'd moved approximately 50 yards northeast from the clearing with the red trees. I was now at the exact coordinates where the ranger's thermal sweep had detected the anomaly. My radio crackled. Dawson's voice tense. "Webb, you missed your check-in. Report status." I looked at my watch. 5:47 p.m. I'd lost 32 minutes. The last thing I remembered was checking the time at 5:10 when I found the red trees. But somehow half an hour had vanished. "I'm here," I said. "I'm okay. But I lost time." "Lost time? Explain." "I found the red trees, 4 of them in a clearing. I was documenting them when I heard footsteps. Then I saw thermal signatures, 3 of them. They spoke to me using the missing hikers' voices. I followed them and they just disappeared. When I checked my watch, 30 minutes had passed, but I only experienced maybe 5. Long silence, then, "Webb, I'm pulling you out. Return to the trailhead immediately." "Negative. I'm close to something here. I can feel it." "That's an order, Agent Webb. Whatever's in those woods, it's affecting your perception. You're experiencing time distortion and auditory hallucinations. Get out now before it gets worse." "Dawson, I'm thinking clearly. I'm documenting everything. The missing hikers are here somehow. I heard their voices. I saw their heat signatures." "You saw something that looked like heat signatures. Webb, please. I've worked these woods for 20 years. There are places here that don't follow normal rules. If you stay in there after dark, I don't think you're coming back." I looked at the sky. Through the canopy, I could see it was getting darker. Sunset would be in maybe 45 minutes. Full dark in an hour and 15. "I'll return," I said. "But I'm marking this location and coming back tomorrow with more equipment." "Fine. Just get out of there now." I started hiking back toward the trailhead, following my GPS track. The forest seemed darker than it should be, even accounting for the failing light. Shadows gathered under trees between ferns in every hollow and depression. At 6:15 p.m., I heard the voices again. Behind me this time, from the direction I'd just come. Multiple voices, overlapping, all saying the same thing. "They're waiting in the red trees." I didn't turn around. I kept walking, picking up my pace. "They're waiting in the red trees." Closer now. The voices were following me. I started to run, crashing through underbrush, jumping over logs. My lungs burned. Branches whipped at my face. The GPS showed I was heading in the right direction toward the trail, toward safety. "They're waiting in the red trees." Right behind me. Close enough that I could feel breath on my neck, except when I glanced back with my thermal scope, there was nothing there. I ran harder. My rational mind knew I was experiencing some kind of psychological effect. Something about this location that caused auditory hallucinations. But my primal mind didn't care about rationality. My primal mind knew something was chasing me, and I needed to get away. I burst out onto the main trail at 6:34 p.m. The moment my feet hit the maintained path, the voices stopped. Sudden silence, absolute and total. I stood there gasping, hands on knees trying to catch my breath. Behind me, the forest looked normal. Dark, yes, but natural. No glowing eyes, no shapes and shadows, no indication of anything unusual. I radioed Dawson. "I'm back on the main trail, heading to the trailhead now." Thank God. We were about to send a team. "I'm fine. Shaken up, but fine." I hiked the remaining 3 miles in gathering darkness, using my headlamp to light the way. Reached the trailhead at 7:45 p.m. Dawson was waiting in the parking lot, along with 2 other rangers. "You look like hell," he said. "I feel like hell, but I got data, a lot of data." We drove back to the ranger station. I spent 2 hours downloading recordings, organizing photos, writing preliminary notes. The audio recording of the three voices was clear. The thermal imaging footage showed the signatures exactly as I'd seen them. The GPS track documented my movements perfectly, including the 32 minutes of lost time where my position marker didn't move at all. Dawson watched me work, his expression troubled. "What do you think is happening out there?" "I don't know. Something that affects human perception. Something that exists in wavelengths we can't normally see. Something that uses the voices of its victims to lure more people." "Its victims? You think there's an it involved?" "I think there's a phenomenon, whether natural or otherwise, that's trapping people. The missing hikers are still in those woods somehow. I heard them. They're trying to communicate, or whatever has them is using them to communicate. What's your next move?" "Tomorrow morning, I'm going back with specialized equipment. Full-spectrum cameras, military-grade thermal imaging, electromagnetic field mappers, everything. If there's something in those woods that exists outside normal perception, I'm going to document it." Dawson was quiet for a moment. "Agent Webb, I've seen a lot of strange things in these forests. Lights with no source, sounds that don't make sense, places where compasses spin and GPS goes haywire. Most rangers learn to avoid those places, mark them as hazards and move on. But you're talking about going deeper into one. I'm talking about finding 3 missing people. What if they don't want to be found? What if they're part of it now?" That thought had occurred to me. Then I need to know that too. I spent that night in a motel in Port Angeles, 20 minutes from the ranger station. Couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard those voices. "They're waiting in the red trees." Over and over, perfectly synchronized, emotionless. At 3:47 a.m., my phone rang, unknown number. I answered. Static. Then, underneath it, voices. Rachel, Daniel, Emma, speaking in unison. "They're waiting in the red trees." "Who's waiting?" I asked. "What do you want?" "They're waiting in the red trees. Tell me where you are, I can help you." "They're waiting in the red trees." The call disconnected. I checked my phone log. The call had lasted 43 seconds. The number showed as unknown, untraceable. I got up, made coffee, tried to rationalize what was happening. Phone call could have been a prank. Someone had listened to the recordings, got my number from the ranger station, decided to mess with the FBI agent, except the voices were perfect. Exact matches to the recordings, down to inflection and tone. At 6 a.m., my phone rang again. This time it was Dawson. "Webb, we have a problem. Tom Brennan, the hiker who reported hearing voices last night, he's gone." "Gone where?" "Back into the forest. He left a note at his hotel saying he needed to find them, that they were calling to him, that he understood now. His car's still in the parking lot, but he's not in his room. We think he went back to his campsite from last night, maybe farther." "Damn it. When did he leave?" "Sometime between midnight and 4 a.m. Front desk didn't see him go. He's heading for the red trees. That's my fear. I'm assembling a team. We leave in 30 minutes. I'll be there in 15. We hit the trail at 6:45 a.m., 6 of us total. Me, Dawson, 3 rangers, and a volunteer. Search and rescue coordinator named Sarah Mitchell who'd worked these woods longer than anyone. The plan was to reach Tom's campsite from last night, then track northeast toward the Red Tree clearing. The morning was gray and cold, typical Washington October. Mist hung in the trees, reducing visibility to maybe 50 feet. Everything was damp. Everything smelled of rot and mushrooms and wet earth. We moved fast, reaching Tom's abandoned campsite at 8:20 a.m. His tent was still there, collapsed and partially packed like he'd started to take it down, then changed his mind. His gear was scattered, suggesting hurried departure. Sarah, the SAR coordinator, examined the ground around the site. She was in her 50s, lean and weathered, with the kind of eyes that missed nothing. "Here," she said, pointing to compressed vegetation leading northeast. Single person moving quickly, not bothering with trail discipline. He was heading somewhere specific. "Toward the red trees," I said. We followed the track. Tom had moved in an almost straight line, ignoring terrain difficulty, pushing through thick underbrush that most hikers would detour around, like he was being pulled. At 9:05 a.m., my EMF detector started showing elevated readings. "We're entering the anomaly zone," I reported. "Everyone stay alert. If you see anything unusual, anything at all, call it out immediately." "What are we looking for?" one of the rangers asked. "Heat signatures with no visible source, voices with no speakers, time distortions. Anything that doesn't make sense." The ranger looked uncomfortable. "Agent Webb, with respect, in my experience, when things don't make sense in these woods, it's better to turn back." "Noted, but we have a man lost in here and he went missing looking for 3 other people. We're not turning back." We pushed deeper. The forest felt wrong again, that same subtle wrongness I'd experienced yesterday. Like reality was slightly out of phase here, operating on rules different from the rest of the world. At 9:34 a.m., Sarah stopped abruptly. "Do you hear that?" We all froze, listening. At first, nothing. Then faint but distinct voices, multiple voices overlapping, speaking in unison. "They're waiting in the red trees." "That's them," I said. "The same phenomenon I encountered yesterday." "Jesus," Dawson muttered. "It's real." "Everyone turn on your audio recorders," I said. "Document everything." The voices grew louder as we advanced. Now we could hear individual speakers. Rachel's voice, Daniel's, Emma's, and a new one, Tom Brennan's. All of them speaking the same sentence in perfect synchronization. "They're waiting in the red trees." "Tom!" Sarah called out. "Tom Brennan, if you can hear me, respond." The voices continued, unchanging. We pushed through dense ferns into a small clearing. The red trees, 4 of them, exactly as I'd described. Douglas firs with that wrong reddish tint, like they'd absorbed blood. They formed a square around a central space maybe 15 feet on each side. In the center stood Tom Brennan. He was facing away from us, perfectly motionless, arms at his sides. He was standing in the exact middle of the compressed ground I'd noticed yesterday. "Tom!" Sarah moved toward him. "Wait!" I grabbed her arm. "Something's wrong." Tom didn't respond to Sarah's call, didn't move, just stood there, statue still, facing something we couldn't see. I pulled out my thermal monocular, scanned the clearing. Tom showed normal heat signature, but arranged around him in a circle were 4 other signatures. Rachel, Daniel, Emma, and a 4th I didn't recognize, all facing inward toward Tom. "There are 4 other people in this clearing," I said, standing around Tom. "I can see them on thermal, but not with normal vision." "Where?" Dawson asked. "There, and there." I pointed to each signature's location. "They're arranged in a circle around him." Sarah pulled out her own thermal scope, looked through it. "Oh God, I see them. What are they?" "I don't know, but we need to get Tom out of there." I started forward. The moment I crossed into the space between the red trees, everything changed. The sound dropped away. One moment I could hear my team, the forest, normal environmental sounds. The next moment, silence, absolute and total. I turned back. Dawson, Sarah, and the rangers were still there, but they looked frozen. Not moving, not breathing, locked in mid-action like someone had pressed pause. And I could see them now. Rachel Voss stood 10 feet to my left, perfectly visible. She looked exactly like her photographs, except her eyes were wrong. Empty. Like she was there but not there, present but not conscious. Daniel Morrison stood to my right. Same empty expression, same hollow presence. Emma Hartley directly ahead, between me and Tom. And behind Tom, facing outward, was a fourth figure I didn't recognize. Older woman, maybe 60, wearing hiking clothes that looked decades out of date. "Rachel," I said. "Can you hear me?" She turned her head slowly, looked at me with those empty eyes. Her mouth moved. There, waiting in the red trees, her voice was the same as I'd heard on the recordings, but there was something underneath it now, a quality I hadn't detected before. Fear. Buried deep, but there. "Who's waiting? Where?" "They're waiting in the red trees." I approached Emma, who stood between me and Tom. "Emma, I'm FBI. I'm here to help you. You need to come with me. They're waiting in the red trees." She didn't move, didn't react, just stood there, mouth moving to form words she didn't seem to understand. I looked at Tom. He was still facing away from me, still motionless. I walked around the circle, came at him from the front. His eyes were open, empty like the others, mouth slightly parted. "Tom," I said. "Tom Brennan, can you hear me?" His mouth moved. "They're waiting in the red trees." I reached out to touch his shoulder. My hand passed through him, not through his body, not like he was intangible, through the space where his body appeared to be. My hand encountered no resistance, no solid matter, nothing. Tom Brennan was visible but not physically present. I pulled back, looked at my team frozen outside the red tree boundary, looked at the four figures arranged around Tom, looked at Tom himself, standing in the center like an offering. This was a trap, an incredibly sophisticated trap that used missing persons as bait to lure more people, then captured them and added them to the display, which lured more people in an endless cycle. But what was doing the trapping? I pulled out my thermal monocular, looked around the clearing. There, high in the canopy of the trees, barely visible even with thermal imaging, was another signature. Large, much larger than human, spread across multiple trees like it was part of them, or they were part of it. And it was looking at me. I felt it. The weight of its attention, whatever it was. Not malicious, exactly. More like curious. Studying me the way a biologist might study an insect. I raised my camera, took a photo. The shutter clicked, impossibly loud in the silence. The signature moved. Not quickly, but deliberately, flowing from tree to tree like liquid, maintaining its connection to all four red trees while shifting position to get a better view of me. I took another photo, another, documenting this thing that shouldn't exist, this intelligence that had learned to trap humans using their own voices and curiosity against them. My radio crackled. Dawson's voice, distorted and slow, like a record played at wrong speed. "Webb, what's happening?" I tried to respond, but my voice wouldn't work. The air had become thick, resistant, like trying to speak underwater. The signature in the trees moved again, closer now. I could see it more clearly through the thermal scope. Not solid, not really. More like heat and electromagnetic energy organized into a pattern that approximated living form. It had been here a long time. The red trees were its roots, or its fingers or its anchors into physical reality. The missing persons were its... what? Food. Prisoners. Collectors. I looked at Rachel, Daniel, Emma, Tom, and the unknown older woman. 5 people standing in a circle, speaking words that meant nothing, trapped in a space where time didn't flow normally. Were they suffering, aware, or had whatever consciousness they possessed been subsumed into the larger intelligence in the trees? I needed to leave, get back across the boundary, return to normal space where my team waited. Bring specialized equipment, experts, people who understood things I didn't. But as I turned toward the edge of the clearing, the 4 captured hikers moved. In perfect synchronization, they took a step inward, toward Tom, toward the center. Tom began to sink, not falling, sinking, into ground that had become soft, liquid. He went down slowly, inch by inch, that empty expression never changing. "No," I tried to say, but the word came out as barely a whisper. Rachel took another step inward. So did Daniel, Emma, and the older woman. The circle was tightening. Tom was waist-deep now, still sinking, still staring ahead with those hollow eyes. I ran toward him, trying to grab his arm, pull him up. My hands passed through him. He was visible, but not physically present in any way I could affect. The 4 surrounding hikers took another step. They were maybe 6 feet from Tom now, close enough that I could see the fine details of their faces. Rachel had dirt under her fingernails. Daniel's glasses were slightly crooked. Emma had a small scar on her left cheek. They looked real. They looked present. But they were as intangible as Tom. Ghosts or echoes or something I didn't have words for. Tom's head went under. The ground swallowed him smoothly, like water accepting a stone. The disturbed earth settled immediately, leaving no trace he'd been there. The 4 hikers stopped moving, turned outward again, facing the forest beyond the red trees. Resumed their motionless vigil, and in the canopy above, the thermal signature pulsed once, bright and intense like satisfaction. I ran, crashed back across the boundary between red trees back into normal space where sound existed and time flowed correctly. My team unfroze, lurched back into motion. "Webb!" Dawson grabbed my arm. "You were in there for 3 minutes, just standing still. We couldn't reach you. What happened?" "Tom's gone," I gasped. "He's gone. It took him." "What took him?" "I don't know. Something in the trees, something big. I got it on thermal imaging." I pulled up the photos on my camera. The first few showed the clearing normally, no anomalies. Then the image where I'd captured the signature in the canopy. Except it wasn't there. The photo showed normal trees, normal branches, nothing unusual. The massive thermal signature I'd seen and photographed had left no trace on the image. "There was something there," I said. "I saw it, large thermal presence spread across multiple trees." Sarah was scanning the clearing with her own thermal scope. "I'm not seeing anything unusual. Normal temperature patterns for forest canopy." "It was there. It moved when I photographed it. It was watching me." Dawson and the Rangers exchanged looks. I knew what they were thinking. The FBI agent had experienced psychological break. Stress, isolation, suggestibility. Common enough in search operations, especially in areas with history of strangeness. "I know how this sounds," I said, "but I'm telling you, Tom Brennan just sank into the ground in front of me. Those 4 missing persons are standing in that clearing right now, and there's something in those trees using them as bait." "We can't see them," Dawson said gently. "Webb, look through your thermal scope. What do you see?" I raised the monocular, scanned the clearing. Empty, no heat signatures except normal forest patterns. "They're gone," I whispered. "They were just there." "I think we need to get you back to the ranger station," Sarah said. "You've been exposed to something in this area. Maybe environmental toxin, maybe something else. But your perception is compromised." "I'm fine. My perception is—" I stopped. Was I fine? I'd lost 30 minutes yesterday. Heard voices that might not have been there. seen thermal signatures that disappeared, watched a man sink into solid ground. All of it could be hallucination. Psychosis brought on by unknown factors. Except the audio recordings were real. Other people had heard the voices. Tom Brennan had gone missing. 3 hikers had vanished 10 days ago from this exact area. Something was happening here. Even if my perception of it was distorted, something real was affecting people. "All right," I said. "Let's head back. But I'm coming back tomorrow with more equipment and more people. We can discuss that after medical evaluation," Dawson said. We hiked out in silence. I kept my EMF detector running, monitoring for anomalies. The readings stayed elevated until we were about half a mile from the red tree clearing, then dropped to normal. Whatever the phenomenon was, it had a boundary, a range beyond which it couldn't or didn't operate. We reached the trailhead at 11:45 a.m. I'd been in the forest less than 5 hours, but felt like I'd been gone for days. Dawson drove me back to the ranger station. "I'm recommending you take 24 hours off, get checked by a doctor, rest, then we can talk about next steps." "I don't need 24 hours. I need to understand what's in those woods. Webb, 4 people have vanished in that area in 10 days. All of them experienced the same auditory phenomena you did. All of them went deeper into the woods instead of leaving. Whatever's there, it has a specific effect on human psychology. You're not immune to it." He was right. I knew he was right. But accepting that meant accepting I couldn't trust my own perceptions, and that was a dangerous place for an investigator to be. I spent the afternoon at the ranger station reviewing footage and recordings. The thermal images I'd captured showed brief flickers of anomalous signatures, but nothing clear or sustained. The audio recordings captured the voices perfectly, but analysis revealed nothing about their source. At 3:47 p.m., all the equipment simultaneously malfunctioned. The computers froze. The audio playback stuttered and went silent. The lights flickered. Every electronic device in the ranger station experienced momentary disruption. Then, through the speakers of the frozen computer, came a voice. "They're waiting in the red trees." Not one voice. All of them. Rachel, Daniel, Emma, Tom, and dozens more I didn't recognize. Layer upon layer of voices, speaking in perfect unison. "They're waiting in the red trees." The computers rebooted. Systems came back online. Everything returned to normal. I checked the timestamp, 3:47 p.m. The same time mark that appeared on Emma's original recording. The same time mark when I'd first heard the voice at the campsite. 3 separate incidents, different days, exact same time. Not the same time of day necessarily. 3:47 p.m. Yesterday had been 3:47 p.m., but at the campsite, the recording timestamp was 3:47, meaning 3 hours and 47 minutes into the recording, not the actual time of day. And the phone call last night from the unknown number had lasted 43 seconds. Not quite the same, but close enough to the pattern. 3:47, 43. There was a numerical pattern here. Time-based, maybe. Or representing something else. I pulled up all the data, organized by timestamp. Every anomalous event had occurred at a time mark containing 3, 4, and 7 in sequence or close to it. What did those numbers mean? I spent 2 hours researching. Geographic coordinates. No match. Frequency? Possible, but speculative. Historical significance? Nothing obvious. Then I thought about the number differently. Not as separate digits, but as a whole. 3:47. I pulled up a map of the area, measured distances. The red tree clearing was 3.47 miles from the ranger station. Exactly 3.47 miles. and the original campsite where the hikers vanished was 3.47 miles from their planned endpoint on the trail. Every significant location in this case was separated by 3.47 miles, or occurring at timestamp 347, or involving 43-second durations. The phenomenon wasn't random. It operated on a specific mathematical pattern, using distance and time as variables. But why? What purpose did the pattern serve? At 6:30 p.m., Dawson found me still at the computer, surrounded by notes and calculations. "You're supposed to be resting," he said. "I found something, a pattern. Everything in this case relates to the number 347. Distances, times, durations. It's all connected." He looked at my notes. "What does it mean?" "I don't know yet, but it's not random. Whatever's in those woods is intelligent and it's operating according to specific rules. If we can understand the rules, maybe we can predict its behavior. Maybe we can stop it from taking more people. Or maybe you're seeing patterns that aren't there because your brain is trying to make sense of something senseless. Maybe, but I don't think so." My phone buzzed. Text message from unknown number. 3.47 miles northeast, 3:47 a.m. They're waiting. I showed Dawson. "I'm going back." "Absolutely not. Webb, that's clearly bait. Whatever's out there, it's trying to lure you back." "I know, but it's also giving me information. 3:47 miles northeast from here. That's a specific location. And 3:47 a.m., that's a specific time. If I go to that exact spot at that exact time, maybe I'll finally see what this is. And maybe you'll vanish like the others. Maybe, but 4 people are already gone. If I can prevent more disappearances by understanding this thing, it's worth the risk." Dawson was quiet for a long moment. "If you're going back, you're not going alone. And we're bringing everything. Full tactical team. Communication equipment, the works. No, whatever this is, it responds to individuals. Bringing a team will change the dynamic. Then I'm going with you. Just the 2 of us. Non-negotiable." I considered arguing, but saw the determination in his face. "All right, 2 of us. We leave at 2 a.m., reach the location by 3:30, set up observation, and see what happens at 3:47. This is insane, probably, but so is letting this thing keep taking people." We spent the evening preparing. Full documentation equipment, multiple GPS units, communication gear, emergency beacons, cold weather clothing, weapons. Not that I thought weapons would help against whatever was in those woods, but they provided psychological comfort. At 1:45 a.m., we loaded Dawson's Ranger vehicle and drove to the trailhead. The forest at night was a different creature entirely. Darkness so complete, our headlamps seemed to create light rather than reveal it. Sounds carried strangely, echoing off trees and rock, making distance impossible to judge. We hiked northeast, following GPS coordinates. 3:47 miles from the ranger station. The terrain was rough, no trails, forcing us to navigate by instruments alone. At 3:28 a.m., we reached the coordinates. Another clearing, smaller than the red tree area, maybe 10 feet across. And in the center, barely visible in our lamplight, was a circle of stones, not natural. Someone or something had arranged them deliberately. 12 stones forming a perfect circle about 6 feet in diameter. "This wasn't here before," Dawson said. "I've hiked this area. There was no stone circle. Maybe it appears and disappears like everything else." We set up at the edge of the clearing, cameras pointed at the stone circle, recorders running, thermal scopes ready. Waited. At 3:43 a.m., my EMF detector spiked. "It's starting," I whispered. The air inside the stone circle began to shimmer, not like heat distortion, like reality itself was becoming unstable. At 3:45 a.m., figures appeared inside the circle, Rachel, Daniel, Emma, Tom, and the unknown older woman, all standing in the same formation I'd seen at the red tree clearing, but now I could see them with naked eyes, not just thermal imaging. They looked solid, present, real. "Do you see them?" I asked Dawson. "Jesus Christ. Yeah, I see them." At 3:46 a.m., they began to speak. They're waiting in the red trees. Not in unison this time. Each voice distinct, overlapping, creating harmony. They're waiting in the red trees. At 3:47 a.m., the thing in the canopy appeared. I saw it clearly now. Not humanoid, not any shape I could name. It existed in multiple trees simultaneously, connecting them like neural pathways. Electromagnetic energy organized into conscious pattern. Ancient beyond measure. Patient beyond understanding. And it was waiting. Not for us. For something else. Using missing persons as bait, yes, but not to feed on them. To collect them. To arrange them in specific patterns at specific locations at specific times. Building something. A structure made of humans and trees and time. A pattern that spanned miles and minutes and meaning. Each captured person a component. Each red tree a node, each stone circle a vertex. "It's making a map," I said, "or a circuit, or a..." At 3:48 a.m., everything stopped. The figures vanished. The shimmer ended. The thing in the trees withdrew. The clearing was empty again, just stones and dirt and normal forest. Dawson and I stood in silence for a full minute. "What did we just see?" he finally asked. "The truth," I said. "And we're not supposed to understand it." We hiked back to the ranger station as dawn broke. Neither of us spoke much. What was there to say? At 7:30 a.m., sitting in Dawson's office with coffee that had gone cold, I started writing my report. Knew it would be dismissed, knew I'd sound insane, wrote it anyway. 4 missing persons, 1 additional missing person, multiple anomalous phenomena. Pattern recognition suggests intelligent design. Recommend area closure and ongoing monitoring. Recommend no additional personnel enter the affected zone. I filed the report at 10 a.m. and requested reassignment. Couldn't keep working this case. Not because I was scared. Because I understood now. The thing in the red trees was building something. And every attempt to investigate, every person sent in to search, every FBI agent trying to solve the mystery was just adding components to whatever it was constructing. The only way to stop it was to stop feeding it. Stop sending people. Let it finish its pattern, or abandon it, or wait until it moved on. 6 weeks later, I heard from Dawson. 5 more hikers had gone missing in the Olympic National Forest. Different area, 20 miles from the red tree clearing. But the pattern was the same. Voices repeating the same phrase. Thermal signatures with no visible source. Stone circles appearing where none had existed before. And the distance between incidents? 3.47 miles. The reassignment put me behind a desk in Seattle doing case reviews. Safe, boring, normal. Exactly what I needed. Except I couldn't stop thinking about the red trees. Every night I'd pull up satellite imagery of the Olympic forest looking for patterns. Sections of canopy that showed reddish tint. Clearings that appeared and disappeared between image captures. Anything that suggested the phenomenon was spreading. And it was spreading. Over 3 months I documented 17 new locations showing similar characteristics. Each exactly 3.47 miles from an existing site. The pattern was expanding geometrically, doubling every 6 weeks. At this rate, the entire Olympic National Forest would be covered within a year. I brought my findings to my supervisor. He listened politely, then suggested I take vacation time. Maybe see a therapist. The official stance was that the Olympic disappearances were tragic but explainable. Hikers getting lost, succumbing to exposure, falling into ravines. Nothing supernatural, nothing to warrant ongoing FBI attention. The case was closed. I should have accepted that, should have moved on, should have focused on my assigned work and let the forest keep its secrets. But at 3:47 a.m. on January 14th, I received another text from unknown number. "They're almost ready. Come see." Just that. No context, no explanation. But I knew what it meant. The pattern was nearing completion. Whatever the thing in the trees was building, it was almost finished. And it wanted me to witness it. I called Dawson. "Did you get a text?" "At 3:47 a.m.? Yeah." Scared the hell out of me. "Are you going?" Long pause. "Are you?" "I have to know. Then I'll meet you there." We arranged to meet at the ranger station at dawn. I packed my equipment, told no one where I was going, and drove west through darkness toward the Olympic Peninsula. Dawson was waiting when I arrived at 6:15 a.m. He looked like he hadn't slept well. Neither had I. "Any idea what we're walking into?" he asked. "Not really, but I brought something new." I pulled out a device that looked like a modified radar detector. Quantum field detector. Measures fluctuations in space-time topology. If whatever's in those woods is bending reality, this should show it. "Where did you get that?" "Friend in Defense Advanced Research Projects. Don't ask. He doesn't want credit." We loaded gear and started hiking. This time, we weren't heading for any specific previous location. The text message had included coordinates, a spot I'd never visited, exactly in the geometric center of all the mapped anomaly sites. The hike took 4 hours through increasingly difficult terrain. We passed 3 stone circles along the way, all exactly 3.47 miles apart. At each one, my quantum field detector showed measurable distortions. "Reality's thinner here," I said at the 3rd circle. "The barrier between normal space-time and wherever that thing exists. It's weakening. Is that bad? Depends on what's on the other side." We reached the central coordinates at 10:33 a.m. What we found there made the previous sites look like practice runs. A massive clearing, at least 100 feet across, and instead of 4 red trees, there were dozens. Arranged in concentric circles, each tree a node in a larger pattern. Between them, stone circles nested within each other like ripples on water. And in the very center, the missing persons. Not 5, not 10. At least 50 people, standing in elaborate formation. Some I recognized from the original case. Most I didn't. All with that same empty expression, that hollow presence. They were arranged in a specific pattern, a geometric design that hurt to look at, that made my eyes slide away, that my brain couldn't quite process. "Web," Dawson whispered. "What is this?" "The complete pattern," I said. "This is what it's been building." The quantum field detector was screaming, numbers scrolling too fast to read. The distortion here was off the scale. I pulled out my camera, started documenting. The pattern of people, the arrangement of trees, the nested stone circles, every angle, every detail. That's when I noticed the empty spaces. In the human pattern, there were gaps, specific positions where no one stood, and when I counted them, there were exactly 2 empty spaces. "Dawson," I said slowly, "I think those spaces are for us." He looked at where I was pointing. "You're right, 2 gaps, positioned to complete the pattern. It's been planning this from the beginning. Every text message, every anomalous event, every breadcrumb that led us here. We're not investigators. We're components it needed. Then we leave, now." We turned to go. The 50 missing persons turned with us. In perfect synchronization, they all shifted position, all facing our direction. And for the first time since I'd started this investigation, they said something different. "Please stay," they said in unison. "It's almost finished. We need you." Not the things speaking through them. The missing persons themselves, whatever consciousness they retained, begging us to complete the pattern. "Why?" I asked. "What happens when the pattern completes?" "Freedom," they said, "for all of us. But it needs to be finished. 2 more nodes, 2 more connections. Then the bridge opens and we can cross." Bridge to where? Away from here, away from it. Back to time that moves forward. I looked at Dawson. He looked at me. "If we step into those positions," he said, "we might end up like them." "If we don't," I said, "they stay trapped forever, and the pattern stays incomplete, which means it'll keep building, keep expanding, keep taking people until it finds 2 more who fit." "How do you know they're telling the truth? How do you know it's not the thing in the trees using them as bait one more time?" I didn't know. Couldn't know. But I looked at those 50 faces and saw the fear buried underneath the emptiness. Saw the hope in their request. "I'm going to do it," I said. "Webb, that's insane. Probably. But I've been chasing this thing for 3 months. If there's a chance of understanding it, of stopping it, of freeing these people, I have to try. Then I'm coming with you." "No. One of us needs to document what happens. One of us needs to get back and report. And if it traps you, then at least you'll know the truth." Before he could argue further, I stepped forward into the clearing. Walked toward the nearest empty position in the pattern. The missing persons watched me approach. No longer speaking, but I could feel their collective attention, their desperate hope. I reached the empty space. Paused. "Webb, don't!" Dawson shouted. I stepped into position. Everything changed. Sound stopped. Time stopped. Motion stopped. I was standing in the pattern, but I was also everywhere in the pattern simultaneously. I could see through 50 pairs of eyes, feel 50 bodies arranged in geometric perfection, understand 50 different perspectives on what was happening. And I could see it clearly now. The thing in the trees was ancient, older than the forest, older than the mountains, older than humans. It existed in dimensions we couldn't perceive, wavelengths we couldn't measure. The red trees were its fingers, reaching into our reality. The missing persons were its tools, arranged to create a focal point. But it wasn't malicious, it was trapped, just like its victims, caught between dimensions, unable to exist fully in either. Using humans to build a bridge, a pattern of consciousness and biology that could tear a hole between worlds. The missing persons weren't food or prisoners. They were collaborators, volunteers who'd heard its call and answered, understanding on some level that this was bigger than their individual survival, and the pattern was almost complete. 1 more node, 1 more connection. Dawson needed to step into the final empty space. I tried to speak, but had no mouth, tried to move, but had no body. I was part of the pattern now, distributed across 50 consciousnesses, existing in a state that wasn't quite life and wasn't quite death. Through 50 pairs of eyes, I saw Dawson at the edge of the clearing. Saw him raise his camera, document everything. Saw him look at the empty space next to mine. "I'm sorry, Webb," he said, "but I can't." He turned and walked away. The pattern remained incomplete, and I understood with perfect, horrible clarity that I would stay here forever. Part of the pattern, distributed across multiple bodies, conscious but unable to act. Waiting for someone else to hear the call. Someone else to find the red trees. Someone else to complete what we'd started. Time resumed, but differently. I could feel it moving, but I couldn't move with it. stuck at 3:47 the moment I'd stepped into the pattern. Forever. Days passed. Weeks. Months. I experienced them all simultaneously, a eternal present where nothing changed and everything changed. Other hikers came. Some heard the voices. Some saw the thermal signatures. Most left quickly, spooked by the wrongness of the place. But one didn't leave. A young woman, late 20s, hiking alone. She found the clearing at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, stood at the edge, looking at the pattern of people who weren't quite there. "Hello," she called. "Is anyone real?" Through 50 mouths we answered, "We're real, we're waiting, please help us." She stepped closer. "What are you waiting for?" Completion. One more node. One more person. Then we can all leave. Where will you go? Somewhere time moves forward, somewhere we can die like we're supposed to. This pattern keeps us alive but frozen. We need it finished so it can release us. She looked at the empty space, the final position. What happens if I step there? The pattern completes. The bridge opens. We all cross, including you. To where? We don't know. But anywhere is better than here. She stood thinking for a long time. I could see the conflict on her face, read it through the clarity that came from existing in multiple states. She was depressed, had been for years. Come to the forest to decide if she wanted to keep living. And here we were offering her a choice. Step into the unknown with 50 strangers, or walk away and face her life alone. "If I do this," she said, "if I help you, promise me it's real. Promise me I'm not just going crazy." "It's real," we said. "We promise." She nodded slowly, took a breath, stepped into the final position. The pattern completed. Everything exploded, not violently, more like a dam breaking, all that trapped energy and consciousness and dimensional stress releasing at once. I felt myself fragmenting. The 51st body joined the pattern, and suddenly we were one consciousness instead of 51 separate ones. The boundaries dissolved. Webb and Rachel and Daniel and Emma and Tom and 45 others I'd never met all became one thing. And the bridge opened. I can't describe what the bridge looked like because it didn't look like anything. It existed in senses humans don't have, but I felt it open. Felt the pathway form between trapped dimension and somewhere else. The pattern began to move. Not the physical bodies. Those stayed in the clearing, empty shells now. But the consciousnesses, the actual people who'd been distributed across those bodies, we moved, up through the red trees, through the canopy, into spaces between dimensions where the ancient thing waited. It wasn't hostile, never had been, just desperate. Trapped for eons, unable to move forward or back, reaching out to the only conscious beings it could contact for help building an escape route. We passed through it, understood it, forgave it, and then we crossed. The other side was darkness at first, then gradually light. Sound, sensation. I was lying on forest floor, alone, in my own body, able to move. I sat up, looked around. The clearing was empty. No pattern of people, no red trees, just normal forest, gray and damp and ordinary. My watch showed 3:48 p.m. 1 minute had passed. I found Dawson 3 hours later, hiking back toward the ranger station. He nearly shot me when I emerged from the forest. "Webb, is that really you?" "Yeah, it's me." "You've been gone for 6 months." 6 months, it felt like 1 minute. He grabbed me, checked I was solid. "What happened? Where are the others?" "They crossed, we all crossed. The pattern completed and the bridge opened, and 51 people who were trapped in broken time finally moved forward. To where? I don't know, but I'm back. And I think the others are back too, wherever they're supposed to be. Over the next week, reports came in. People who'd been missing for years suddenly reappearing. Always in forests, always disoriented, always with the same story. They'd lost time, seen strange patterns, tried to help something trapped between dimensions. Rachel Voss turned up in Portland. Daniel Morrison in Seattle. Emma Hartley in Vancouver. Tom Brennan at his home, confused but alive. 46 others scattered across the Pacific Northwest. All alive, all having experienced the same impossible thing. The Olympic National Forest cleared. No more red trees, no more stone circles, no more voices repeating endlessly. The ancient thing had crossed, and it had taken its trap with it. I tried to file a report, tried to explain what had happened. My supervisor listened politely, then suggested again that I take vacation time. The official stance remained. The missing persons had been found, cause of disappearance, environmental disorientation. Case closed. I accepted that. Accepted that some things can't be documented or proven. Accepted that I'd experienced something impossible and survived it. But I kept the recordings, kept the thermal images, kept every piece of evidence I'd collected. And sometimes at 3:47 a.m., I'll wake up and wonder if I really came back, or if I'm still in the clearing, distributed across 51 bodies, dreaming I escaped. 6 months after the crossing, I was still at the Seattle desk job, still reviewing case files, still pretending everything was normal. But it wasn't. I'd started experiencing episodes, moments where I'd be somewhere else. Not physically, but perceptually. I'd be sitting at my desk and suddenly I was in the forest, standing in the clearing, seeing through multiple eyes. It lasted seconds, never more than a minute, but it was happening more frequently. 3 times a week at first, then daily, then multiple times per day, and always at 3:47. Morning or afternoon didn't matter. When my clock hit 3:47, I'd shift. Briefly become part of that pattern again. See through those 51 perspectives. The others were experiencing it too. Rachel Voss called me in March. "Agent Webb, this is going to sound crazy, but are you seeing things? Multiple things simultaneously?" "Yes," I said, relieved I wasn't alone. "Starting at 3:47? Exactly. It's getting worse. Yesterday I was driving and suddenly I was seeing from 3 different positions at once. Nearly crashed. I organized a meeting. 7 of us who'd been part of the pattern. We met at a restaurant in Seattle, trying to look normal while discussing impossible things. Daniel Morrison spoke first. "It's like part of us is still there, in the clearing. The bridge opened, and we crossed, but some thread connects us back to that moment. Like quantum entanglement," Emma Hartley said. She'd gone back to her geology studies but was now focusing on theoretical physics. "We were all connected in that pattern. Maybe the connection didn't fully break when we crossed." "So what do we do?" asked Mark Collins, one of the missing persons I'd never met before the pattern. "I can't live like this. I have a family. I have a job. I can't keep phasing out at 3:47 every day." "Maybe we need to go back," I said. Everyone looked at me. "The clearing is gone," Rachel said. "Rangers confirmed it. Normal forest now. The physical clearing is gone. But what if the dimensional space still exists? What if we can access it deliberately instead of being pulled there randomly?" "And do what?" Daniel asked. "Sever the connection. Complete the crossing properly. Whatever we did before, it was incomplete. We got back, but we left something there. Or it left something in us." Tom Brennan, who'd been quiet until now, nodded slowly. I've felt it too, like there's an anchor in my chest, pulling me back. Getting heavier every day. If we don't cut it, I think eventually it'll pull us back permanently. We agreed to return to the forest. All of us. Find the coordinates where the clearing had been. See if we could access the dimensional space deliberately. 2 weeks later, 11 of us gathered at the Olympic Ranger Station. Not all 51. Some couldn't come. Some refused. Some had disappeared again, pulled back into whatever space we'd briefly escaped. Dawson met us there. He'd been monitoring the area since I'd returned. Reported no anomalies, no red trees, no disappearances. But he believed our story now. Had seen too much to dismiss it. If you're going back in, he said, I'm coming with you. You don't have to. Yeah, I do. I walked away last time. Left you trapped. Not making that mistake again. We started hiking at dawn. 11 former pattern participants and 1 ranger who'd witnessed the impossible. The forest felt different now. Lighter, somehow. Like pressure had been released. No EMF anomalies. No thermal signatures. Just normal Pacific Northwest wilderness. We reached the coordinates at 11:30 a.m. The clearing was gone, replaced by thick undergrowth. But when I checked my quantum field detector, it showed residual distortion. Faint, barely measurable. But there. Something's still here, I said. The physical manifestation is gone, but the dimensional weak point remains. So how do we access it? Rachel asked. At 3:47, I said. That's when the connection is strongest. If we're all here at 3:47, maybe we can cross back deliberately. We set up camp. Waited. The day passed slowly. People tried to rest, but nervous energy kept everyone moving. We all felt it. The pull toward 3:47. The weight of connection. At 3:40 p.m., we gathered in a circle where the clearing had been. Held hands, like some New Age ritual. Felt ridiculous, but also right. At 3:45 p.m., the episode started. But stronger this time. All of us seeing through multiple perspectives simultaneously. The forest overlaid with memories of the pattern. At 3:46 p.m., the space began to shimmer, not visibly, in some other sense. The quantum detector was screaming. At 3:47 p.m., we crossed, not violently this time, smoothly, slipped from normal forest into dimensional space like stepping through a door. We were back in the clearing, but different. The pattern was empty now. No human figures, just the framework, the geometry, the structure we'd created. And at the center, barely visible, the ancient thing waited. It looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. The crossing had weakened it, or maybe completed its purpose. It wasn't trapped anymore, wasn't desperately reaching out, it was dying. You came back, it said, not in words, in direct thought, translated through whatever remained of our connection. Why? To finish it, I said. We crossed, but something remained, connecting us. We need to sever it completely. The threads, it said. Yes, they persist because the pattern remembers. You were woven so tightly that even separation couldn't fully untangle you. How do we cut them? You don't, I do. But it will cost me the last of my energy. I will finally cease. After eons of existence, I will end. We looked at each other. 11 people who'd been trapped in its pattern, freed by its bridge, now being asked to witness its death. Will it hurt? Emma asked. No, I don't experience pain as you do, but I will miss existence. Even trapped, I was aware, I was something. Ending is frightening even when it's necessary. Is there another way? Daniel asked. Something that severs the threads but doesn't kill you? No. The threads are maintained by my consciousness. To cut them requires dissolving that consciousness. It's the price of your freedom. We voted silently, through looks and nods, unanimous. Do it, I said, and thank you. Thank you, it replied, for building the bridge, for crossing with me, for giving me these final moments of clarity. I have been alone for so long. The pattern, brief as it was, let me touch other minds, understand consciousness beyond my own. It was beautiful. The space began to shimmer. The ancient thing spread itself across the pattern one final time, reached into each of us, found the threads connecting us to this place, to each other, to the moment of trapped time. And gently, carefully, with what I could only interpret as love, it cut them. I felt the connection sever. The weight in my chest dissolved. The sense of being pulled toward 347 vanished. I was just me again, singular, unconnected, alone in my own consciousness. Around the circle, I saw similar expressions of relief and loss on the others' faces. The ancient thing was fading. Whatever energy it had been using to manifest was dissipating. The pattern collapsed. The dimensional space began closing. Wait, I said. What are you? What species? Where did you come from? I was born when your son was young, it said, voice becoming distant. I traveled between dimensions, exploring, learning. I made a mistake, got caught between states, trapped for millennia. You freed me. That's enough. Will others come? More like you? Perhaps, if they do, be kind. Even ancient things can be lonely. The space collapsed completely. We were back in normal forest, standing in a circle of dead undergrowth. The quantum detector showed baseline readings. No distortion, no anomalies. Whatever had been there was gone. We hiked back in silence. What could we say? We'd witnessed something impossible, been part of something that shouldn't exist, and helped an entity older than human civilization die so we could live normally. At the ranger station, we said goodbye, exchanged contact information, promised to stay in touch, but I knew we wouldn't. What we'd experienced was too strange to revisit casually. Better to let it fade, become uncertain memory, something we could almost convince ourselves we'd imagined. I drove back to Seattle that night. At 3:47 a.m. I woke up, checked my watch, 3:48. The moment had passed. No episode, no connection. Just normal sleep interrupted by old habits. I got up, made coffee, sat at my window watching the city wake up. The case file on my laptop stared at me. Thousands of pages of documentation. Evidence. Analysis. Everything I'd learned. I could file it officially, try to make people believe, try to convince the Bureau that something impossible had happened in the Olympic National Forest. But what would that accomplish? The phenomenon was over. The ancient thing was dead. The missing persons were returned. No ongoing threat, no actionable intelligence, just an impossible story that would make me look crazy. I selected all the files, hovered over the delete button. Couldn't do it. This happened. 51 people experienced it. An entity older than mountains died to free us. That mattered, even if no one believed it, even if it never went in an official file. So I created a private backup, encrypted it, stored it where only I could access it. Evidence of the impossible. Proof that the world is stranger than we admit. Insurance that if something similar ever happened again, someone would have context. Then I closed the laptop and went to work. Life returned to normal. Case reviews, coffee, paperwork, the comfortable routine of a desk job. But I started noticing things, reports of anomalies in other forests, different patterns, different phenomena but similar underlying structure. As if the ancient thing hadn't been unique, as if there were others, still trapped, still trying to build bridges. I didn't investigate. Wasn't my job anymore. I'd done my part, let someone else chase the impossible. But I kept the records, marked the locations, watched the patterns grow. 1 year after the crossing, I received an email. No sender name, subject line, "Thank you." The message was simple. The pattern worked. 51 threads crossed. One consciousness freed, but other patterns exist. Other consciousnesses wait. If you choose to help again, 47347 destination 120 and 3479 Degino W. They're waiting in the red trees. I looked up the coordinates. Washington. Different forest. Several hundred miles from Olympic. Wilderness area, rarely traveled. And in recent satellite imagery, barely visible. Sections of canopy with reddish tint. I sat at my computer for an hour, staring at those coordinates. Could do nothing. Let it be someone else's problem. I'd earned normal life, earned the right to walk away. Or I could go. Could help another trapped thing escape. Could free more people who would inevitably be caught in its pattern. At 3:47 p.m., I made my decision. I called Dawson. "I got an email," I said. "New coordinates, red trees. It's happening again." Long pause. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning, just us this time. Everyone else has earned their freedom, but I need to see. Need to know if we actually solved anything or just postponed it. I'll meet you at the usual place." That night, I packed my equipment. GPS, thermal scope, EMF detector, quantum field detector, audio recorder, camera. Everything I'd learned from the first investigation. And something new. A notebook, empty pages, ready to document whatever I found. Because maybe that's my purpose now. Not to solve these cases. Not to arrest anyone or close files. But to witness. To document. To remember that the world is stranger than we pretend. To be the person who looks at impossible things and says, "Yes, this happened. I saw it. And here's proof." I slept restlessly. Woke at 3:47 a.m. to darkness and silence. No episodes. No connections. Just me and my choice. At dawn, I drove toward new coordinates. Toward red trees. Toward missing persons I hadn't met yet. Toward an ancient thing that needed help I was probably too human to provide. But I'd try. Because someone has to witness the impossible. Someone has to remember that we're not alone in the universe. And someone has to help the ancient things that get trapped between worlds, even when helping them means stepping into patterns we don't understand, trusting consciousnesses we can't prove exist, and accepting that freedom sometimes costs more than we want to pay. The road stretched ahead, mountains rising in early light, forests thick with secrets, and somewhere in those woods, red trees waiting. They're always waiting, and I'm always coming, because that's what I do now. I find the red trees. I document the patterns. I help the ancient things cross, and I hope with each crossing that it's the last one. But I know it won't be. The universe is old and vast and full of things that get lost. Someone has to help them find their way home, even if home is dying, even if crossing means ending, even if the pattern never fully releases those who build it. The quantum detector sat on the passenger seat, already showing readings. 347 miles to the coordinates. Of course. I smiled despite myself. The pattern persists, and I'll keep following it until I become part of it permanently, or until there are no more red trees, whichever comes first. The motel had been closed for 20 years when the body was found. I got the call on a Thursday morning in late November, rain hammering Seattle like it was trying to wash the city into the Sound. My supervisor's voice was careful, the way it gets when a case doesn't fit normal patterns. "Agent Carver, we need you in Everett. Local PD found remains at the old Cascade Motel on Highway 99. Place has been abandoned since 2003, but there's something unusual about the scene." I'm Special Agent Lauren Carver, 12 years with the Bureau, most of that working cold cases out of the Seattle field office. When someone says unusual about a crime scene, it usually means bureaucratic complications, jurisdictional disputes, contaminated evidence, witnesses who won't talk. "What kind of unusual?" I asked. "The body's been there approximately 2 weeks based on decomposition, but the motel's been locked and sealed for 2 decades. No signs of forced entry. And there's video evidence that doesn't make sense." "Video from where?" "That's part of what doesn't make sense. Just come take a look." I grabbed my go bag and drove north through rain that turned I-5 into a river with lanes. Everett sprawled gray and industrial under low clouds. The Cascade Motel sat on a strip of Highway 99 that time had forgotten, surrounded by storage facilities and auto body shops that looked like they'd given up decades ago. The motel was classic mid-century deterioration. 2 stories, 20 rooms arranged in an L shape around a cracked parking lot. Faded blue paint peeling off cinder block walls. Most windows boarded over, a few broken. The neon sign that once said Cascade Motel Vacancy now just said KIEMHL, with dead bulbs making the message cryptic. 3 Everett PD vehicles and a coroner's van occupied the parking lot. Yellow crime scene tape cordoned off room 7 on the ground floor. Detective Mike Foster met me at the tape. He was in his late 40s, with the heavy-set build of someone who'd spent too many years eating vending machine dinners. His expression suggested he'd seen something he couldn't rationalize. "Agent Carver? Thanks for coming." We shook hands under an umbrella that barely kept the rain off. "Fair warning, this one's going to sound crazy. Try me." Victim is male, early 30s. ID in his wallet says Peter Rothman. Seattle address. He's been dead about 2 weeks. Single gunshot wound to the chest. No weapon at the scene. Suicide or homicide? Can't tell yet, but here's where it gets weird. The motel's been sealed since 2003. Owner died in a nursing home 6 years ago. Property's been in probate hell ever since. Nobody's had access. Doors and windows secured, chain link fence around the perimeter. We only found the body because a meter reader noticed broken glass in room 7's window and investigated. So, how did Rothman get inside? That's question 1. Question 2 is why. Place is a condemned wreck. No electricity, no water, no reason for anyone to be here. Question 3 is the video. My supervisor mentioned that. What video? Foster led me toward room 7. We ducked under the tape and approached the door. It hung open now, but I could see the lock was intact. No scratches, no signs of forced entry. "The door was locked when we arrived," Foster said. "Had to cut the chain. Old deadbolt was still engaged from the inside. But here's the thing." He pushed the door fully open. The room beyond was exactly what you'd expect from a motel abandoned for 20 years. Water-stained ceiling, carpet rotted to backing, furniture that had surrendered to mold and decay. The body had been removed, but I could see the outline on the floor marked with evidence tags. And in the corner, on a veneer dresser that had somehow remained standing, sat an old CRT television and a VCR. Both were plugged in. Both had indicator lights glowing. "There's no power to this building," I said. "Correct. Utilities were cut in 2003, but those devices are running. I approached carefully. The TV was a Zenith from the early 90s. The VCR was a Panasonic, same era. Both looked dusty but functional. The VCR's display showed 000 blinking. Has anyone touched these? Not since we documented them. But Agent Carver, you need to see what's on the tape. A VHS cassette sat next to the VCR. Evidence tag attached, but not bagged yet. The label was handwritten in faded ink. Room 7, November 2003. 20 years ago. The same month the motel closed. Play it, I said. Foster hit play on the VCR. Static filled the screen, then resolved into grainy footage. The timestamp in the corner read 11/17/2003, 11:47 p.m. The footage showed this same room, but in better condition. Intact carpet, functioning furniture, lights on. The camera angle suggested it was positioned where the TV now sat, filming toward the door. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Empty room, door closed. Then the door opened and a man entered. He was in his 30s, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. He looked around the room, nervous energy in his movements. Left the door open behind him. He walked to the bed, sat down, pulled out a cell phone. The video had no audio, but I could see his lips moving. Making a call, maybe, or leaving a voicemail. He stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot. His body language suggested he was waiting for someone. Then something appeared in the doorway. A shadow. Human-shaped, but not quite right. Too tall, too thin, proportions slightly wrong. It stood in the doorway for maybe 3 seconds. The man at the window turned, saw it, stumbled backward. The shadow moved into the room. Not walking, gliding. No footsteps, no weight, just smooth motion that didn't match human movement. The man pressed himself against the wall, mouth open like he was screaming. The shadow approached him, reached out with what might have been an arm. The timestamp jumped. 11:47 p.m. to 11:52 p.m. 5 minutes gone in an instant. When the footage resumed, the room was empty. No man, no shadow, just an empty motel room with the door still open. The tape continued for another 10 minutes. Nothing moved, nothing changed. Then static, and the recording ended. Foster stopped the playback. We've watched it a dozen times, can't explain it. I was quiet for a moment, processing. That man in the footage, did you ID him? We're working on it, but here's the thing, Agent Carver. The timestamp says 2003, 20 years ago. But Peter Rothman's driver's license shows he was born in 1992. He would have been 11 years old in 2003. So the man in the video isn't Rothman. Correct, which means either the timestamp is wrong, or we're looking at footage of someone else entirely who happened to be in this room 20 years ago. What about the shadow? Foster's expression tightened. I don't know. Camera artifact, double exposure, something. But it looked solid. It moved with purpose, and right after it appeared, the guy vanished. I looked around the room. Standard motel layout. 1 queen bed, 1 dresser, 1 chair, bathroom visible through a door to the left. No closet, nowhere to hide. If the man in the video had tried to run, he'd have had to go past the shadow to reach the door. Where's Rothman's body now? Coroner took it 2 hours ago. Autopsy scheduled for tomorrow morning. I want to be there. And I want this tape analyzed. Full forensic workup. Check the timestamp authenticity. Look for digital manipulation. Everything. Already ordered. Results should be back by Monday. I walked the room slowly, documenting everything with my camera. The TV and VCR plugged into an outlet that shouldn't have power. The window with recent breaks suggesting someone had exited or entered that way. The floor where Rothman had died. positioned almost exactly where the man in the video had been standing when the shadow approached him. Same room, same position, 20 years apart. Detective Foster, I need the full history of this motel. Previous owners, guests, any incidents that occurred before it closed, and I need to know if anyone else disappeared from this location. I'll get you everything we have. One more thing, that tape, November 2003, do you have records of who was registered in room 7 that night? We're trying to locate the old registration logs. Motel kept paper records. They might still be in the office. We walked across the parking lot to what had been the motel office. The door was already open, Foster's team having gained access earlier. Inside was frozen in time, registration desk covered in dust and dead insects. Key rack on the wall with half the numbered hooks empty. A desk calendar showing November 2003. Specific date torn off. Behind the desk, filing cabinets. Foster opened the top drawer, pulled out a stack of yellowed registration cards. These are the originals. Haven't been touched in 20 years. I pulled on evidence gloves, carefully leafed through the cards. Most were standard. Name, address, license plate, room number. Some had credit card imprints back when that was done mechanically. I found November 17, 2003. Room 7. The card showed a name, James Holbrook. Seattle address. Washington license plate. Registered at 10:35 p.m. Planned checkout the next morning. No checkout time recorded. Run this name, I said. James Holbrook, and get his photo if you can find it. Foster made the call while I continued examining the room. The calendar on the desk bothered me. Why was November 17th specifically torn off? Everything else about this office suggested abandonment mid-operation. Pens still in the cup holder. Papers still in the printer. Coffee mug still on the desk. Contents long evaporated to brown stain. But that one date removed deliberately. I checked the wastebasket under the desk. Empty except for dust and a dead moth. Checked the desk drawers. More registration cards, a stapler, some loose change. In the bottom drawer, I found a journal. The cover was water-stained and warped. The pages inside were handwritten in blue ink, entries dating back to '98. It appeared to be the motel owner's personal log. Not official business records, more like observations and notes. I flipped to November 2003. November 12, 2003. Room 7 guest complained about shadows in his room. Checked the room myself. Nothing there. Offered to move him. He declined. November 14, 2003. Same guest in room 7 again. Different person this time. Also complained about shadows, said he saw someone standing in the corner, but when he turned on the light, nothing there. I'm starting to think there's something wrong with that room's wiring. Lights flicker sometimes. November 16, 2003. Checked room 7 thoroughly. No electrical problems I can find. But I felt something in there. Hard to describe. Like the room doesn't want me there. Cold spot near the dresser that shouldn't exist. Moved the TV, no improvement. November 17, 2003. Guest in room 7 tonight seemed nervous. Asked twice about checkout time. Said he was meeting someone. Told him checkout is 11 a.m. He said he'd be gone before then. Hope so. I don't like that room anymore. The entries stopped. No November 18th, no later dates. The rest of the journal pages were blank. Foster, I called. The motel owner. You said he died 6 years ago. What was his name? Gerald Moss. He was 83 when he died. Had been in a nursing home since 2008. Is he accessible for interview? Accessible, no. But the nursing home might have records. Why? I showed him the journal. He read the November entries, his expression darkening. Guest complained about shadows, he read aloud. And on the night the video was recorded, November 17th, the room was occupied by someone meeting someone else. Who never checked out, I added. James Holbrook checked in at 10:35 p.m. The video timestamp shows 11:47 p.m. Holbrook should have been in that room when whatever happened on the tape occurred. You think the man in the video is Holbrook? I think we need to find out what happened to James Holbrook. And I think we need to understand why Peter Rothman ended up dead in the same room 20 years later. We spent the rest of the afternoon documenting the scene. I collected the journal, the registration card, the VHS tape, and took extensive photographs. The coroner's preliminary report came through around 4 p.m. Peter Rothman had died from a single gunshot wound to the chest, fired at close range. Powder burns suggested contact or near-contact discharge. No weapon recovered at scene. Suicide was possible. But if so, where was the gun? And how had he gotten into a locked room in an abandoned building? I drove back to Seattle as evening fell, the city lights blurred by persistent rain. Stopped at the office to drop off evidence and request research support. I needed everything on James Holbrook, Peter Rothman, the Cascade Motel, and Gerald Moss. At home, I couldn't stop thinking about that shadow on the video, the way it moved, the way the man had reacted, pressed himself against the wall like he was seeing something impossible. And the time skip, 11:47 to 11:52. 5 minutes vanished. At 11:47 p.m. my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Static. Then, underneath it, very faint, a voice. Room 7. Just that. 2 words. Male voice. Muffled, like speaking through cloth or from a great distance. Who is this? More static. Then, Room 7. He's waiting. Who's waiting? James Holbrook? Peter Rothman? The line went dead. I checked my phone log. The call had lasted 47 seconds. 11:47 p.m. to 11:48 p.m. 47 again. The same pattern as the timestamp. 11:47. I pulled up my computer, started digging into numerology and pattern recognition. Found nothing immediately useful. 47 appeared in various contexts, but nothing specific to motel rooms or missing persons. Then I tried something different. Plugged Room 7-1147 into a search engine with Cascade Motel Everett. Got 1 hit. A forum post from 2004, archived on an old paranormal investigation website. The user was anonymous, but the content was specific. Has anyone investigated the Cascade Motel in Everett, WA? It closed suddenly in November 2003. I heard a guest disappeared from Room 7 on November 17th. No body found, no explanation. The owner sealed the room and refused to talk about it. By January, the whole motel was shut down. Someone should check it out. The post had 2 replies, both dismissive. One said it was probably just someone skipping on their bill. The other said paranormal stuff was nonsense and the poster was wasting everyone's time. No further discussion. The thread died. But someone had known about James Holbrook's disappearance within a year of it happening, and that someone thought it was worth investigating. I traced the post metadata. No user information available. The site had shut down in 2011, archives barely maintained, but there was an email contact for the forum administrator. I sent a message, not expecting response. Sites this old rarely had anyone monitoring them. Then I started researching James Holbrook. Washington state databases showed him as missing person filed in December 2003. Last known location, Cascade Motel, Everett. Last seen November 17, 2003. Investigation was brief. No leads, no body. Case went cold. Holbrook had been 34 at the time, software engineer for a Seattle tech company. Single, no children. Parents both deceased. One sister in California who filed the missing persons report after not hearing from him for 2 weeks. I found the sister's contact information. Rita Holbrook, now Rita Morrison after marriage. Still in California, living in Sacramento. I called her. It was late, almost midnight. But this couldn't wait. She answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. "Hello? Miss Morrison, this is Special Agent Lauren Carver with the FBI. I'm calling about your brother James Holbrook." Silence. Then, carefully, "My brother has been missing for 20 years. Why is the FBI calling me at midnight? We've recovered evidence related to his disappearance. I need to ask you some questions." Another pause. "Did you find him? Did you find his body?" "We're investigating a related incident." "Miss Morrison, did James tell you why he was staying at the Cascade Motel the night he disappeared?" "He said he was meeting someone. Didn't say who. He was nervous about it, I remember that. Called me that afternoon, said if anything happened I should tell police he went to the motel." "Did he say what he expected to happen?" "No. Just said he had to meet someone, had to settle something. He sounded scared. I told him not to go, but he said it was too late. He'd already committed." "Committed to what?" "I don't know. He wouldn't explain. That was the last time I spoke to him." "Miss Morrison, in the weeks before he disappeared, did James mention anything unusual? Strange experiences, people following him, anything that seemed off?" She was quiet for a long moment. "He said he was seeing things, shadows that shouldn't be there. He thought maybe he was working too hard, not sleeping enough. But it scared him. Said sometimes he'd turn around and something would be standing there, but when he looked directly at it, nothing." The cold feeling in my stomach intensified. "Did he describe these shadows? Tall, too thin, just at the edge of his vision, always. He started sleeping with lights on, started avoiding being alone. That's why I was worried when he said he was meeting someone at a motel. Seemed like exactly the situation he'd been trying to avoid." "Do you know who he was meeting?" "No. But a week before he disappeared, he got a package. No return address. I was visiting him when it arrived. He opened it, went pale, wouldn't show me what was inside. Just said he had to take care of something." "Did you see anything about the package? Size, shape, postmark?" "Small. Like a videotape size, maybe. Postmark was local, Seattle area." A videotape. "Miss Morrison, one more question. Has anyone contacted you recently about your brother? Anyone asking questions, looking for information?" "No, not for years. The last inquiry was from Everett PD in 2010. They were closing cold cases, wanted to know if I had anything new. I didn't. If anyone does contact you, please let me know immediately." I gave her my number. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment thinking. James Holbrook received a videotape. 1 week later, he went to a motel room to meet someone. He disappeared. The motel owner found something wrong with room 7 and sealed it. The entire motel closed shortly after. 20 years later, Peter Rothman died in that same room, and we found a videotape showing Holbrook's last moments. But who recorded it, and why had the tape been left there, waiting to be found 2 decades later? At 3:47 a.m., I woke from uneasy sleep. My phone was ringing again. Unknown number, I answered. "Agent Carver." Static. Then that same muffled voice. "Room 7, watch the tape again. 11:47, look at the shadow." "Who are you?" "Watch the tape." The call ended, lasted 47 seconds. I got up, made coffee, pulled up the digital copy of the VHS footage on my laptop. Watched it again. focusing on the shadow that appeared in the doorway at 11:47 p.m. Tall, thin, dark, moving with that wrong, gliding motion. I paused at the moment it entered the room, enhanced the image, adjusted contrast, and saw something I'd missed before. The shadow wasn't entirely dark. There was texture to it, subtle variations in the darkness that suggested features. Not clear enough to make out details, but definitely structured. Not just absence of light, but something present, something with form. I advanced frame by frame. The shadow approached Holbrook, reached out, and in the moment before the timestamp jumped, for just one frame, I saw something else. A second shadow, behind the camera, behind where I was sitting now, watching the footage. A shape identical to the one approaching Holbrook, standing in the exact position where the TV had been when I visited the room today. The same position where I'd watched this tape with Detective Foster. I stopped the playback, sat back, thought about the implications. The tape showed two shadows, one approaching Holbrook, one behind the camera, which meant whatever these things were, there had been at least two in the room that night. And if one was positioned where the TV now sat, I grabbed my phone, called Foster. He answered groggily. "Carver, it's 4 a.m. The TV in room 7. When you found Rothman's body, where exactly was it positioned?" "What? The dresser. Same place it is now. Why?" "On the tape, there's a second shadow, standing exactly where that TV is. Foster, I think the camera that recorded Holbrook's disappearance was positioned in the same spot we found the TV and VCR. That doesn't make sense. The recording is from 2003. The TV and VCR we found are different models. Are they? Did you check serial numbers?" Silence. Then, "No. We documented them, but didn't check serials against..." "You think they're the same devices?" "I think someone wants us to watch that tape from the same position it was recorded, and I think Peter Rothman figured that out. Why would that matter?" "I don't know, but 2 people are dead or missing from room 7, both connected to this tape, both at 11:47. There's a pattern here. We need to understand it before someone else becomes part of it." The forensics report on the VHS tape came back Monday morning. I read it twice, unable to reconcile the findings with any rational explanation. The tape itself was authentic. No signs of digital manipulation or modern editing. The timestamp was consistent with 2003-era recording technology. The video had been shot on a Sony Handycam popular in the early 2000s, based on video compression artifacts. But there was something wrong with the temporal signature. The forensic analyst's notes were carefully worded. Timestamp analysis reveals minor inconsistencies. While the visible timestamp reads 11:47, 11:52 p.m. on 11/17/2003, frame rate analysis suggests the actual recorded duration is 7 minutes and 23 seconds, not the apparent 5 minutes. The missing time appears to have been compressed rather than deleted. Recommend further analysis with temporal specialists. Compressed time, like the recording had somehow folded 2 different durations into the same space. The report also noted something about the video quality. Sections of the footage show unusual luminescence patterns inconsistent with standard lighting. Specifically, the shadow figure approaching the subject displays properties that suggest it may be emitting light rather than blocking it. This is physically impossible with conventional recording technology. I called the analyst. Her name was Dr. Sarah Vance, worked out of the Seattle Crime Lab. "Dr. Vance, it's Agent Carver. I have questions about your VHS analysis." "I figured you would. That tape is genuinely strange." You said the shadow might be emitting light. Can you explain? In normal video, dark areas appear dark because they're receiving less light than bright areas. But when I analyze the luminosity values frame by frame, the shadow you asked about shows inverse properties. It's darker than the surrounding area, but it's also somehow brighter in specific wavelengths our eyes can't perceive. That's impossible. I know. But the data doesn't lie. Whatever that shadow is, it's not a normal absence of light. It's something else. What about the missing 2 minutes? You said time was compressed. That's the best term I have. When you watch the tape, 5 minutes pass. But when you count frames and analyze the data signature, 7 minutes and change are actually present. It's like someone took a 7-minute recording and squeezed it into 5 minutes without speeding it up or cutting anything. The extra time is just there, but hidden. Is that technologically possible? Not with any method I know, but Agent Carver, there's something else. I found audio. The tape had no audio. The tape appeared to have no audio. But when I ran spectral analysis, I found sound recorded in frequencies below human hearing. Infrasound. It's present throughout the video, but intensifies during the timestamp jump. Can you make it audible? I can shift the frequency up into human range. But I have to warn you, infrasound can cause psychological effects. Anxiety, unease, sense of presence. There's a reason it's sometimes called the fear frequency. Send me the file. I'll email it. But Agent Carver, be careful listening to it. This isn't normal infrasound. The patterns are too regular, too structured. It's almost like language. The email arrived 10 minutes later. I downloaded the audio file, plugged in headphones, pressed play. For the first 30 seconds, nothing. Just low rumbling that I felt more than heard. Then, gradually, patterns emerged. Not words exactly, but cadences that suggested communication. Rising and falling tones that felt like sentences. Pauses that felt like punctuation. And underneath it all, very faint, human voices. Multiple voices, overlapping, speaking in unison. Too distorted to make out words, but definitely human. The audio intensified at the 5-minute mark, right when the timestamp jumped on the video. The infrasound became almost painful, pressing against my skull. The human voices became clearer. I could make out one word, repeated over and over beneath the low-frequency drone. 7. Just that. 7, 7, 7. Room 7. I stopped the playback, pulled off the headphones. My head throbbed. The room felt wrong, like pressure had changed, like I was at elevation instead of sea level. I called Dr. Vance back. The voice is saying, 7. How many distinct speakers? I counted 47. That number again, 47. Is there any significance to that number? Not that I know, but Agent Carver, I've been thinking about this tape, about the timestamp, the shadows, the audio. I think this isn't just documentation of what happened in that room. I think the tape itself is part of what happened. Like it's not just recording events, it's involved in them somehow. What do you mean? The luminescence patterns I mentioned? They match the wavelength signatures of the recording device itself. The shadow isn't being lit by an external source, it's being lit by the camera, or, more accurately, by the act of being recorded. The camera is making it visible. I process that. You're saying the shadow exists because it's being recorded? I'm saying the recording and the event are linked in a way I don't understand. Correlation isn't just coincidental, it's fundamental. After hanging up, I sat at my desk trying to make sense of it. A videotape that contained compressed time and light that shouldn't exist. Audio that suggested 47 voices speaking in unison. And 2 people connected to it. One vanished, one dead. I needed to talk to Peter Rothman's family, understand why he'd been in room 7. Rothman's emergency contact was listed as his girlfriend, Elena Price. I found her contact information and called. She answered immediately, voice raw from crying. "Hello? Miss Price. This is Special Agent Lauren Carver, FBI. I'm investigating Peter Rothman's death. I'm very sorry for your loss." A shaky breath. "Thank you. Do you know what happened?" "The police said they found him in an abandoned motel but wouldn't tell me anything else. We're still investigating. Miss Price, I need to ask you some questions about Peter's activities in the days before he died." "Okay, yes, anything that helps." "Did Peter mention why he was going to the Cascade Motel?" "He said he needed to check something. Wouldn't explain. He'd been obsessed with that place for weeks." "Obsessed how?" "He found something online, a video, I think. He wouldn't show me, but he watched it constantly. Said it was evidence of something important, something people needed to know about." I told him he was spiraling, that he needed to stop, but he said he was close to understanding. "Understanding what?" "I don't know. He talked about patterns, about time not working right, about shadows that shouldn't exist. He sounded paranoid. I thought maybe he was having a breakdown. I tried to get him to see someone, but he refused." "Miss Price, did Peter have a gun?" "What? No. He hated guns. Wouldn't have one in the house." So the weapon that killed Rothman hadn't been his, which meant either someone else was in that room when he died, or he'd obtained a gun specifically for that trip. "Did Peter mention anyone following him? Anyone threatening him?" "No. But he was scared. The last week he barely slept. Kept checking windows, looking over his shoulder. Said he was seeing things at the edge of his vision. Shadows that moved wrong." Same as James Holbrook, same description. "Ms. Price, when did Peter first start researching the Cascade Motel?" "About 6 weeks ago. He got a message online, someone sending him a link. He clicked it and everything changed. Started spending all his time on his computer, barely ate, stopped coming to bed. I asked what he was looking at, but he said I couldn't see it, that it was dangerous to watch." "Do you know who sent him the link?" "Anonymous account. Peter tried to trace it but couldn't. Whoever sent it knew how to hide their tracks. I need access to Peter's computer. The police took it, but I have his backup drive. He was meticulous about backups. I can give it to you." We arranged to meet that afternoon. I spent the morning reviewing everything I had so far. 2 men, 20 years apart, both connected to room 7 at the Cascade Motel. Both experiencing shadows at the edge of vision before visiting the room. Both at 11:47. James Holbrook disappeared. Peter Rothman died. And there was a videotape that somehow connected them both, showing Holbrook's last moments and ending up in Rothman's crime scene. The pattern was clear, but the mechanism wasn't. How had the tape gotten from 2003 to 2023? Who had recorded it? And what were the shadows? I met Elena Price at a coffee shop in Fremont. She was in her late 20s, eyes red from crying, holding a small external hard drive like it was precious. "This is everything," she said, handing it to me. "His research, his files, everything he was working on before he died. Thank you. This will help. Agent Carver, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you believe in things that can't be explained, things that don't make rational sense?" I chose my words carefully. "I believe in evidence. Sometimes that evidence leads to explanations that challenge our understanding of what's possible. Peter said the world is stranger than we think. Said there are spaces where reality doesn't work right, where things leak through from somewhere else. I thought he was losing his mind. But now he's dead in an impossible room with an impossible videotape. Maybe he was right." After she left, I took the hard drive back to my office and plugged it in. Rothman had been methodical. His files were organized by date and topic. I found a folder labeled Cascade Investigation, with over 200 files inside. The oldest file was dated 6 weeks ago. It contained a video file and a text document. The text document was simple. Watch this. Tell me what you see at 1147, room 7. The video file was the same VHS footage I'd been analyzing. Same timestamp, same shadow, same disappearing man. But this was a digital file, not a physical tape. Someone had converted the original VHS to digital and sent it to Rothman. I checked the metadata. The file had been created November 18, 2003, the day after Holbrook disappeared. So someone had digitized the tape within 24 hours of the recording and held on to it for 2 decades before sending it to Rothman. Who and why? I went through Rothman's other files. He'd been researching the Cascade Motel extensively. Historical records, newspaper archives, property records. He'd found the same forum post I had about Holbrook's disappearance. But he'd gone further. He'd located Rita Morrison and contacted her, gotten details about Holbrook's final weeks. He'd visited the motel multiple times, photographed it from every angle. And he'd found something I hadn't. In a file dated 3 weeks ago, Rothman had discovered that the Cascade Motel had a history. Not just Holbrook's disappearance in 2003. Earlier incidents. 19A7. A couple disappeared from room 7. Last seen checking in November 17th. Found no trace. 1971. A salesman vanished from room 7. November 17th. No body recovered. 1955. The motel's original owner died in room 7. November 17th. Cause of death listed as heart attack, but witnesses reported seeing shadows in the room before his body was discovered. Every 20 years, almost to the day. November 17th. Room 7. Someone disappeared or died. And the pattern suggested another incident was due. I checked the calendar. Today was November 20th, 2023. 3 days ago had been November 17th, the day Rothman died. The pattern had repeated. I kept reading. Rothman had developed a theory, documented in a file labeled Temporal Thesis. He believed Room 7 existed in multiple time periods simultaneously, that something about the location created overlap between different years, specifically years separated by roughly 2 decades. The video showed Holbrook in 2003, but it had been recorded by someone in 2023, reaching back through time. He theorized the shadows were people existing between timelines, not fully present in either, visible only at specific moments when the timelines aligned. And those moments clustered around 11:47 p.m. on November 17th. His evidence was circumstantial but compelling. The motel owner's journal showing guests complaining about shadows starting in the late 1990s. The architectural plans showing Room 7 had been built on the site of an old structure that burned down in 1953. Historical records showing the previous structure had also had reports of unusual phenomena in the equivalent location. Something about that specific spot made reality thin. Time didn't flow normally there. Past and future bled together. And according to Rothman's timeline, the next incident would occur November 17th, 2043, 20 years from now, unless the pattern was accelerating. His final entry, dated November 16th, was chilling. I'm going to room 7 tomorrow night, 11:47 p.m. If I'm right, I'll see them, the shadows, and maybe I'll understand what Holbrook saw before he vanished. Maybe I'll understand what all of them saw. Elena, if you're reading this, don't come looking for me. If I don't come back, I made my choice. Some questions have to be answered even if the answer is dangerous. Rothman had gone to room 7 knowing he might not return. He'd walked into that room at 11:47 p.m. on November 17th, camera running, ready to document whatever happened. And he'd died there. But where was his camera? The crime scene had only shown the old VHS setup. No modern recording equipment. I called Foster. "Did you recover any cameras from Rothman's body or the room?" "No. Why? He went there to record. He should have had equipment." "We found his phone in his pocket, but the battery was dead, nothing on it." "What about his car? Where was it parked?" "In the motel lot. We searched it. Clean, except for some camping gear in the trunk." "I'm coming back to Everett, tonight. I need to check something." "Carver, what's this about?" Rothman believed Room 7 exists in multiple time periods at once. That's why the VHS tape shows 2003 but appeared in 2023. It's not about the tape traveling through time. It's about the room itself being a fixed point where different years overlap. That's impossible. So are shadows that emit light and time that compresses, but we have evidence of both. I drove to Everett as dusk fell, the highway slick with rain. The Cascade Motel looked worse in fading light, all its decay and abandonment emphasized by shadows. Foster met me there with 2 other officers. "What are we looking for?" "Rothman's camera. I think it's in the room, but not in our time." "You've lost me." If Room 7 overlaps different time periods and Rothman went there in 2023 to record what happened to Holbrook in 2003, then his camera might have ended up in the overlap, visible from one time period but not another. We entered Room 7. The TV and VCR were still there, still inexplicably powered. I checked the outlets again. No power to the building, but the devices had charge. I pulled out a device from my bag, electromagnetic field detector, sensitive enough to pick up minor fluctuations. "What's that?" Foster asked. "If there's temporal overlap, it should create EM distortion. This will show it." I turned on the detector and swept the room. Most areas read normal, but near the dresser where the TV sat, the readings spiked. "Here," I said, "something's wrong with this spot." I moved the TV aside, checked behind it. Nothing visible. But the EM readings were off the scale. "Foster, do you have a camera that can see infrared?" "In my vehicle. 1 second." He returned with a FLIR thermal camera. I took it, pointed it at the wall behind where the TV had been. Through the thermal view, I saw it. A handprint. Recent, still radiating heat. But when I looked with naked eyes, no mark on the wall. "There's a handprint here that's only visible in thermal." "That's impossible." "Point your camera at it." Foster pulled out his phone, took a photo of the wall, looked at the image. Jesus, the handprint shows up in the photo. We both stared at the phone screen. Clear as day, a handprint that wasn't there when we looked directly at it. "It's in a different time," I said. "The wall is solid for us, but someone in another time period touched it recently. The heat signature is crossing over somehow. This is insane." "Where's the handprint positioned?" Foster checked. "About chest height, like someone pressed against the wall. Like they were trapped. Like they were trying to get through." I had an idea. Irrational, but worth trying. "Foster, can you get me a video camera? Something that can record continuously?" "I have one in my vehicle. Body cam." "Perfect. Set it up pointing at this wall. I want to record overnight, see if anything changes." "You're going to leave it here?" "Someone left the VHS equipment powered for 20 years. I want to see what happens if we add a new camera to the room." We set up Foster's body cam on a tripod, aimed at the wall with the thermal handprint. Set it to record continuously. "I'll check it tomorrow morning," Foster said. "No, I will. This is FBI jurisdiction now." He didn't argue. We were both unsettled enough that jurisdictional disputes seemed trivial. As we left room 7, I glanced back. In the fading light, for just a moment, I thought I saw something standing in the doorway. Tall, too thin, wrong proportions. I blinked, and it was gone. "Did you see that?" I asked Foster. "See what?" "Nothing. Trick of the light." But I knew it wasn't. That night, I reviewed Rothman's files again, looking for anything I'd missed. Found a folder I'd overlooked before. Communications. Inside were email drafts, unsent messages Rothman had written but never delivered. The first was addressed to me. "Agent Carver, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead or gone. I'm sorry. I tried to solve this myself, but it's bigger than one person. The pattern spans decades, maybe centuries. Room 7 is just one node in a larger network. I found others. Motel rooms across the country, always room 7, always experiencing temporal anomalies. This isn't isolated, it's widespread. Someone or something is using these rooms as anchors, creating stable points where time doesn't flow linearly. Why? I don't know, but it's getting worse. The overlaps are becoming more frequent, more pronounced. Soon, these rooms won't just show echoes of other times. They'll be fully connected. Past, present, future, all accessible from one location. What happens then? Peter Rothman. The email was dated November 16th, the day before he died. I checked the attachments. He'd included a list of locations, 23 motels across the western United States, all with similar reports. Strange occurrences in room 7, guests disappearing, shadows, time distortions, all following the same pattern. Incidents roughly 20 years apart, always November 17th or close to it. This wasn't just about the Cascade Motel, it was everywhere. I should have reported it to my supervisor, should have requested additional resources, brought in experts. But something stopped me. The same thing that stopped Rothman. If this pattern involved temporal anomalies, bringing more people in might just create more victims. Better to understand it first, figure out the mechanism, then decide how to proceed. At 11:47 p.m., I received another call. Unknown number. I answered. I'm getting tired of these calls. Static. Then, tomorrow, room 7, come alone. Bring the tape. Who are you? Someone who wants this to end. End how? The pattern can be broken, but only from inside, only at 11:47. Tomorrow, November 21st. It's not the regular date, but the overlap is still active. Rothman destabilized it, created a window. One chance. Don't waste it. Why should I trust you? Because I'm James Holbrook, and I've been trapped here for 20 years. Please, Agent Carver, come break the pattern, or I'll be here forever, and so will everyone else. The call ended. I sat in darkness, heart pounding. James Holbrook calling from 20 years ago, or calling from the overlap, or calling from some space between times that shouldn't exist, telling me to go to room 7 tomorrow night with the tape. It was obviously a trap. Had to be. No rational scenario where this ended well, but if it was really Holbrook, if he'd been trapped for 2 decades in temporal overlap, then I had an obligation to help. And if the pattern could be broken, preventing future disappearances across multiple locations, then I had an obligation to try. I made my decision. Tomorrow night, 11:47 p.m. Room 7, I'd go, bring the tape, and see what waited in the overlap. I spent Tuesday preparing. Told no one where I was going or what I planned. Left a sealed letter with my supervisor, instructions not to open unless I didn't return within 48 hours. Downloaded all of Rothman's research. Made copies, stored them in multiple locations. If something happened to me, someone else could continue the investigation. Visited a military surplus store, Bought equipment, night vision monocular, handheld radio, emergency beacon that broadcast on restricted frequencies, flashlight with both white and red LEDs, paracord, first aid kit, probably useless against temporal anomalies, but better than going unarmed. I also brought my service weapon. No reason to think a gun would help, but I felt better having it. At 3 p.m., I visited the evidence locker, checked out the original VHS tape. The clerk logged it, asked when I'd return it. "Tomorrow," I said, "unless something goes wrong." "Goes wrong how? Don't worry about it." I drove to Everett at 9 p.m., light traffic on I-5, rain steady. The Cascade Motel looked different at night. Not just abandoned, hungry, like the building was waiting for something. Foster's body cam was still in room 7, recording as programmed. I collected it, reviewed the footage on my laptop. 8 hours of nothing. Empty room. Wall with the thermal handprint showing faintly in the camera's low-light mode. Then, at 3:47 p.m., something changed. The handprint began moving. Not the heat signature fading or dispersing, moving, sliding down the wall like someone was dragging their hand. Over 30 seconds, the print moved from chest height to floor level, then vanished, like someone had collapsed or been pulled down. I rewound, watched again. Same movement, deliberate, controlled, then sudden disappearance. Who had made that print? When were they? And were they still there, trapped in overlap, pressing against a wall I couldn't see? At 11 p.m., I set up in room 7. Brought the VHS tape, the old TV and VCR that had been found with Rothman. Confirmed they still had power despite no building utilities. Set up my own camera on a tripod, aimed at the wall with the handprint. Set my phone to record audio, laid out emergency equipment where I could reach it quickly. Then I sat on the bed and waited. The room felt wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Not horror movie wrong, subtly wrong. Like air pressure was different. Like gravity pulled slightly sideways. Like I was in a place that wanted me to leave but also wanted me to stay. At 11:30, I loaded the VHS tape into the VCR. Positioned myself where someone in 2003 would have been recording Holbrook's final moments. Same spot where the camera had been in the original footage. Same spot where the second shadow had stood. At 11:40, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Agent Carver, you came. Is this really James Holbrook?" "Yes. I know you don't believe me. I wouldn't believe me. But I've been here since 2003. 20 years in overlap. Time doesn't pass normally here. I've lived the same night thousands of times, watching other versions of myself disappear, watching the shadow approach, trying to figure out how to break free." The shadow. What is it? Not what, when. It's a person displaced in time existing between moments. When you're in overlap, you can see them. When you're in normal time, they're invisible. But they're always there, trapped, reaching across years trying to find their way back. So, you're a shadow now. To you, yes. But to other people in other times, I'm solid, real. It depends on your temporal position. Agent Carver, the tape. You need to play it. Why? Because it's a bridge. Rothman figured it out. The tape shows my last moments from 2003, recorded by someone in 2023. It contains both time periods simultaneously. When you play it from inside the overlap, at the exact moment it was recorded, it creates resonance. Aligns the different timelines, creates a window. A window to what? To breaking the pattern. Room 7 is a loop. It captures people, folds them into overlap, keeps them circling the same moments forever. But if you can synchronize multiple time periods, overload the overlap with too many instances occurring simultaneously, it breaks. Resets, releases everyone trapped. How do I synchronize them? Play the tape at 11:47. Stand exactly where the camera stood. Become part of the recording. When your present self overlaps with my past self and Rothman's recording self, the pattern can't sustain. 3 instances of 1147, same location, same event. The loop breaks. What happens to you? I don't know. Maybe I go back to 2003, continue my life. Maybe I vanish completely. Maybe I move forward to now. But anything is better than this. Please. At 11:45, I positioned myself in front of the TV. The tape was cued to start at 11:47. My camera recorded everything. If this worked, if it didn't, at least there'd be evidence. At 11:46, the room changed. Not dramatically, subtly. Colors became slightly more vivid. Sounds became slightly clearer. The air developed texture, like I could feel time itself pressing against my skin. I was entering overlap. At 11:47, I pressed play on the VCR. The TV flickered to life. The footage I'd watched a dozen times began playing. Room 7 in 2003. James Holbrook entering, nervous, waiting for someone. But now, watching from inside the overlap, I saw more. The room on the TV wasn't just a recording. It was a window. Through the screen, I could see the actual room as it existed in 2003. Holbrook moved, and I could hear his footsteps, could hear him breathing. "Hello?" I called. He turned, looked directly at me, at the TV, at the camera position I now occupied. "Who's there?" he asked. "FBI. James, you need to leave, right now. You're about to be trapped." "I can't leave. I'm waiting for someone." They said they had information about the shadow appeared in the doorway. But now, from my position in overlap, I could see it clearly. Not a shadow at all. A person. Female, wearing clothes from a different era. She looked transparent, flickering, but definitely human. "James," she said. Her voice echoed, layered, like multiple versions speaking at once. "I'm sorry. This is the only way." "Margaret?" Holbrook stepped back. "What are you doing? What's wrong with you?" "I've been trapped here since 1987. 36 years in overlap. I can't escape alone. I need an anchor, someone to take my place." No, I'm not staying here. You don't have a choice. When you entered this room at 11:47, you entered the pattern. Now, you're part of it." She moved toward him with that wrong gliding motion. He pressed against the wall, exactly where the thermal handprint would appear 20 years later in my time. "Please," he said. "Don't do this." She reached out, touched him, and he folded. Not disappeared. Folded. Like reality creased, and he slipped into the crease, present but displaced. I could still see him, but he was translucent now, overlapped, trapped between moments. The TV timestamp jumped. 11:47 to 11:52. 5 minutes compressed, just like the analysis showed. When the footage resumed, Margaret was gone. Holbrook was gone. The room was empty. But from my position in overlap, I could see them both, standing in the room, existing in the space between seconds. Trapped. Agent Carver. Holbrook's voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "You see it now? The pattern. She trapped me like someone trapped her, and someone before her. Going back decades, each person escapes by trapping the next. Then I won't trap anyone. I'll break the cycle. You can't. Once you're in overlap, the only way out is to transfer it to someone else. That's how the pattern sustains itself. Victim becomes victimizer. It's been going for over 70 years. There has to be another way. There is. The synchronization. But you need 3 instances. Me in 2003, you in 2023, and someone else in 2043. All of us at 11:47, same position, same awareness. That's enough temporal density to break the loop. There's no one in 2043. That year hasn't happened yet. But in overlap, all times exist simultaneously. If you can pull someone from 2043 into this moment, or push yourself forward to meet them, the synchronization completes. How? The tape. It shows 2003. You're watching in 2023. If you record yourself watching it, that recording will exist in 243. Someone will find it, just like you found mine. They'll play it at 11:47, and the three instances will align. The pattern breaks. I understood. The tape Rothman had been sent. I was supposed to create it, record myself in this moment, watching the 2003 footage so that 20 years from now, someone else could watch me watching it, creating the three-layer synchronization. But that takes 20 years. You'll be trapped until 2843. I've been trapped since 2003. Another 20 years is nothing compared to eternity. Please, Agent Carver, record this. Create the next layer. Let the pattern finally end. I looked at my camera on the tripod. It was recording everything. Me, the TV showing 2003, the room as it existed in 2023. When someone found this footage in 2043 and played it at 11:47, they'd see me watching Holbrook. 3 time periods, same location, same moment. Enough to break the pattern. All right, I said, I'm recording, but Holbrook, I'm not leaving you here. You have to. If you stay, you become trapped. Then, in 2043, when they play the recording, you'll still be here. The pattern won't break, it'll just add more victims. He was right. The synchronization required me to leave, to return to normal time, to let the recording exist as a bridge without becoming trapped myself. There's one thing I don't understand, I said. Margaret, the woman who trapped you, she mentioned someone trapped her in 1987. Who was it? From the wall, another voice. Male, older. I did. I'm sorry. I was desperate. Had been trapped since 1971. And another voice, female, elderly. I trapped him. Forgive me. I've been here since 1955. And more. Voices layering, overlapping. Decades of victims, all trapped in room 7, all existing in the overlap simultaneously. How many? I asked. 47, Holbrook said. Going back to 1907, all of us waiting for the pattern to break. 47. That number again. The voices on the audio analysis. 47 distinct speakers. They'd all been saying the same thing because they were all experiencing the same thing. Trapped in room 7, waiting for release. In 2043, when someone plays my recording, what happens to all of you? We're released, sent back to our original times, the moment before we entered overlap. Given a chance to choose differently, we get our lives back. Including you, including me. I'll be in 2003 again, receiving that package, deciding whether to visit room 7, and this time I won't come. I'll throw the tape away. I'll live my life. What about the person who plays the recording in 2043? They have to choose. Stay and become trapped, or leave and let the synchronization complete. Most people choose to leave, but there's always a risk. The pattern is seductive. It wants to continue. It'll try to keep whoever enters. I looked at the TV. The 2003 footage had ended. The screen showed static. My camera was still recording, capturing everything. I had what I needed. The 3-layer documentation. 2003, 2023, 2043. Time to leave. Holbrook, I'm going. Thank you, Agent Carver. In 2043, I hope to be living a normal life. Maybe we'll meet. Maybe I'll remember this. Maybe I won't. Either way, you saved 47 people. That matters. What do I tell your sister? Rita's been wondering what happened to you for 20 years. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I made a choice and it was the wrong choice, but I'm fixing it. Tell her she'll see me again, just 20 years younger than she expects. I started toward the door. The room resisted. That subtle wrongness intensified, became physical pressure trying to keep me in place. I pushed through, one step, then another. Behind me, the voices rose. 47 people, speaking in unison. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I reached the door at 11:52. The exact moment the timestamp jumped on the original footage. Stepped through. The pressure released. I was back in normal time, standing in a derelict motel room at midnight, rain hammering the roof. I turned around. Through the doorway, I could see room 7. Empty. No TV, no VCR, no camera equipment. Just an abandoned room that hadn't been occupied in 20 years. The overlap had closed. I collected my camera, my phone, my equipment. Left the original VHS tape on the dresser where I'd found it. Someone in 2043 would need it to complete the pattern. Outside, Detective Foster was waiting, looking worried. Carver, you were in there for 47 minutes. I was about to come in. 47 minutes, of course. What happened? I recorded what I needed to record. The case is solved, Foster. Or it will be in 20 years. That doesn't make sense. I know, but it's true. James Holbrook didn't die or disappear. He got trapped in temporal overlap. So did 46 other people going back to 1907. They're all still there, waiting for someone in 2043 to play a recording that will synchronize 3 time periods and break the pattern. Foster stared at me. You're not joking. I'm not joking. And I have proof. Video evidence, audio evidence, 47 voices recorded in infrasound, all of it documented. But Foster, we can't stop what's happening. We can only complete it. What do you mean? I mean in 2043, someone will find my recording. They'll play it at 11:47 on November 17th, and when they do, 47 people will be released from overlap, including James Holbrook. But until then, they're trapped. And there's nothing we can do to help them except make sure my recording survives. We stood in the rain, looking at the dark facade of room 7. This is insane, Foster said. I know, but it's true. So what happens now? Now I file a report that won't be believed. I document everything. I make sure the recording is preserved, and I wait 20 years to see if I was right. Foster shook his head. I'm too old for this. I'm retiring next year. Someone else can deal with this insanity. Smart choice. I drove back to Seattle in the early hours, exhausted, my head spinning with implications. I'd seen temporal overlap, talked to someone trapped for 20 years. Recorded evidence that would change everything we understood about time and space, but no one would believe it. Not without context, not without preparation. So I wouldn't tell them, not yet. I'd file a classified report, store the evidence in sealed archives, mark it to be opened in 2043, 20 years from now. When someone in 2043 found my recording and played it, the synchronization would complete. 47 people would be released. And I'd be vindicated, or I'd be forgotten. Either way, I'd done what I could. At home, I prepared the archive. Digital files, physical media, notarized documents, instructions for future investigators, sealed it all in a box, labeled it clearly. To be opened November 17th to SI-43. Critical evidence in Cascade Motel case. Do not open before this date or synchronization will fail. Delivered it to FBI records personally. made sure it was cataloged correctly. Then I went home and slept for 16 hours. When I woke, I had 47 missed calls, all from unknown numbers. I didn't answer them, I knew what they were. 47 voices thanking me from overlap. 47 people counting down 20 years until freedom. I erased the calls, blocked the numbers. Some things are better left in the past, or the future, or whatever strange space exists between them. The report I filed was classified within hours of submission. My supervisor called me into his office, closed the door, asked me what the hell I'd been thinking. "You can't submit a report claiming temporal anomalies," he said. "The Bureau will think you've had a breakdown. Read it again. Look at the evidence. 47 distinct voices recorded in infrasound. Video showing time compression. Physical handprints visible only in thermal imaging. All documented, all verified. Or explainable as technical glitches and environmental effects. Carver, I'm not saying you didn't experience something, but temporal overlap? People trapped between years? That's science fiction. It's evidence. Whether you accept the interpretation or not, the data is real." He was quiet for a long time. Finally, "The evidence is sealed. The case is closed. Peter Rothman's death is listed as suicide, gun disposed of by person or persons unknown. James Holbrook remains a missing person. The Cascade Motel will be demolished next month. That's the end of it." And the recording I made? Archived. Sealed until 2043 as you requested. If you're right, someone will find it and do whatever you think will happen. If you're wrong, it'll stay sealed forever and no one will ever know you filed an insane report. Fair enough. I was reassigned. Out of Seattle, away from anything related to the Cascade Motel or temporal phenomena. Sent to Denver, given fraud cases, kept busy with routine work, punished, essentially, but subtly. Nothing official, nothing I could appeal, just a career trajectory that had been derailed. I didn't fight it. Understood the reasoning. Can't have agents filing reports about time travel and ghosts. Bad for institutional credibility. But I kept my copies of the evidence. Private backups, stored securely. Just in case someone in the future needed them. 3 months after closing the case, I received a package at my Denver office. No return address. Inside was a VHS tape. The label read, Room 7, November 2023. My heart stopped. I hadn't created a VHS tape. I'd recorded digitally. So where had this come from? I found an old VCR, plugged it in, played the tape. It showed Room 7, same camera position as my recording. Same timestamp, November 21st, 2023, 11:47 p.m. But the video quality was wrong. Too grainy, too degraded. Like it had been copied multiple times. Like it was old. And as I watched, I realized why. This wasn't my original recording. This was a copy made in 2043, sent back to me in 2024. Someone 20 years in the future had found my recording, created a VHS copy, and sent it back through time. Through the overlap. The video showed me standing in Room 7, watching the 2003 footage on the TV. Showed the moment I'd created the 3-layer synchronization. But there was something else on the tape. Something I hadn't recorded. At 11:52, after I'd left the room, the camera kept recording. The room didn't stay empty. One by one, figures appeared. Translucent at first, then solid. 47 people materializing out of overlap. James Holbrook, looking exactly like his 2003 photo. Margaret from 1987. The man from 1971. The woman from 1955. All of them, spanning decades, all released. They looked around the room, confused but aware. Free. Then they walked out the door, one by one, returning to their own times. The last figure to appear was someone I didn't recognize. A woman in her 30s wearing clothes that looked futuristic. 2043 fashion, maybe. She looked directly at the camera, spoke. "Agent Carver, if you're watching this, the synchronization worked. Everyone was released. Holbrook is back in 2003, living his life. The pattern is broken. But I need to warn you, Room 7 isn't the only location, there are others. Rothman was right. This phenomenon is widespread. I found 12 more sites, all operating on similar patterns. And they're accelerating. Soon they won't need 20-year intervals. They'll overlap constantly, trapping people continuously. Someone needs to stop them. Someone needs to understand why these locations exist and shut them down before more people are lost. I'm sending you the coordinates. Please continue the investigation." The video ended. Static filled the screen. Inside the package was a folded paper, a list of locations, handwritten. 12 motels across the western United States, all with Room 7, all with histories of disappearances, all waiting to trap their next victims. I sat at my desk, holding the list, thinking about the implications. The Cascade Motel was closed. The pattern there was broken. 47 people freed, but 11 other sites remained active. And according to the woman from 2043, more were emerging. This wasn't over. It was escalating. I should have reported it. Should have brought it to my supervisor, requested resources, built a task force. But they'd already dismissed my evidence once. Wouldn't believe this new information. Would see it as confirmation that I'd become unreliable. Better to investigate quietly. Build an airtight case before revealing it. I started researching the coordinates, found the motels, pulled their histories. Every single one had the same pattern. Disappearances from Room 7, approximately 20 years apart. Going back decades, sometimes over a century. This wasn't random, it was systematic. Someone or something had created these locations deliberately. Built a network of temporal traps across the country. Designed them to capture people, fold them into overlap, keep them suspended between moments. Why? What purpose did it serve? I spent 6 months investigating. Visited 8 of the 12 sites, documented everything. Collected evidence that would have made my previous report look conservative. And at every location, I found the same thing. Room 7, positioned in a specific architectural configuration, built on ground with unusual electromagnetic properties, often occupying sites where previous structures had shown similar phenomena. The pattern went back further than 1907, much further. Historical records, when I could find them, suggested these locations had been strange for centuries. Native American tribes had stories about spaces where time didn't flow right, where spirits got trapped, where reality was thin. The motels had been built on those spaces. Whether deliberately or coincidentally, they'd anchored themselves to locations where overlap was natural, where the barrier between different time periods was already weak. And once a motel occupied such a space, it became a trap. Anyone entering Room 7 at the wrong time, the overlapping moment, got caught. Suspended. Used to stabilize the next cycle. It was elegant in a horrifying way. Self-perpetuating. Each victim helped trap the next, maintaining the pattern indefinitely. But why? What intelligence had designed this system? I found the answer in the 11th location, a motel outside Reno, Nevada, the oldest continuously operating site on the list, with documented phenomena going back to 1892. In their archives, kept in a water-stained box in the manager's office, I found a journal from 1892. The motel's founder, a man named Silas Kern. He wrote about his discovery, a place where time was strange, where he could see other years, other decades, all layered over each other. He'd built the motel deliberately to study it, to try to understand why that specific spot showed temporal properties. And he'd learned something terrifying. The overlap wasn't natural. It was artificial, created by something from outside our timeline entirely. His final entries were frantic, barely legible. It's not from Earth, not from any time we recognize. It's from somewhere else, some dimension where time works differently. It's using our world as a storage space, trapping people, not out of malice, but because it needs anchors. Fixed points it can reference. We're like bookmarks to it, marking specific moments so it can navigate our timeline. I've doomed us all. By building here, by studying it, I've made it stronger. Now it wants more anchors, more motels, more room 7s. It's spreading, and I don't know how to stop it. The journal ended there. Silas Kern disappeared November 17, 1892. From room 7. The first recorded victim. Or maybe the architect who'd condemned everyone who came after. I photographed every page. Sealed the journal back in its box, left the motel. This was bigger than temporal overlap, bigger than trapped people. An intelligence from outside our reality was using motel rooms as anchors, marking our timeline like surveyor stakes. For what purpose? Navigation? Study? Invasion? I didn't know, but I knew it had to be stopped. The problem was, I had no idea how. You can't fight something that exists outside time. Can't trap something that uses temporal overlap as a tool. I needed help. Expertise I didn't have. Scientists who understood theoretical physics. Intelligence agencies who dealt with classified phenomena. I started making contacts. Careful inquiries. Mentioned temporal anomalies without giving specifics. Felt out who might believe, who might help. Most people dismissed me, politely but firmly. Temporal anomalies weren't real. Time travel was science fiction. I was chasing shadows. But a few listened. A physicist at MIT who studied closed time-like curves. An analyst at DARPA who worked on classified temporal research. A retired CIA officer who'd investigated similar phenomena in the 1970s. Together, we formed an unofficial working group. No formal mandate, no budget, no authority. Just 5 people who believed something impossible was happening and wanted to understand it. We called ourselves Room 7. Over 2 years, we developed a theory. The entity using motels as anchors didn't exist in our 3-dimensional space. It existed in a higher dimension, where time was a navigable geography. To it, our timeline was like a river. It couldn't enter the river directly, but it could drop anchors. And those anchors, the motel rooms, allowed it to pull itself along our timeline, exploring, studying, maybe preparing for something larger. The people trapped in overlap were collateral damage, not intentional victims, just side effects of the anchoring process, like insects caught in amber, preserved but not targeted. But as the entity used more anchors, as more Room 7s came online, the effect was accelerating. Overlap periods were lasting longer, happening more frequently. Soon they'd be constant. And when overlap became permanent, when all those locations existed simultaneously in multiple time periods, the entity would have full access to our timeline. Past, present, future, all connected. What would it do then? We didn't know, but we suspected it wouldn't be good for the insects caught in its amber. We needed to collapse the anchors, destroy the Room 7s before they reached critical mass. But how do you destroy something that exists in multiple time periods simultaneously? Demolishing the physical structure wouldn't work. The anchor was temporal, not spatial. The physicist, her name was Dr. Sarah Chen, had an idea. Synchronization breaks the pattern at one location, she said. We saw that with the Cascade Motel. But what if we synchronized all the locations simultaneously, created a cascading collapse, break every anchor at the same moment, across decades, overload the entity's navigation system? How? I asked. The same way you broke one location, 3-layer documentation. But not just one site, all 12 sites, all at 11:47 on November 17th, all with recordings spanning 2003, 2023, and 2043. The temporal density would be overwhelming. The anchors would collapse. That requires perfect coordination. People at all 12 sites at the exact same time. In 2043, yes, 20 years from now. We can't do it in our time, but we can prepare, create the recordings, store them, ensure they're found and played simultaneously in 2043. What about the people trapped now? They'd have to wait 20 years. Yes, but it's the only way to stop more people from being trapped in the future. We debated for months. Ethical implications, practical difficulties, the sheer improbability of coordinating 12 simultaneous recordings 2 decades from now. But ultimately we had no choice. The pattern was accelerating. If we didn't act, the anchor network would reach critical mass before 2043, and then no synchronization would help. We divided responsibilities. Each of us took locations. Planned visits for November 17th, 2023. At 11:47 p.m., I took 3 sites: Washington, Oregon, Nevada. The others took the remaining 9: California, Arizona, Montana, Colorado, Wyoming. We'd all record simultaneously. Create the second layer needed for future synchronization. Then hide the recordings where they'd be found in 2043 when someone played them and completed the pattern. November 17th, 2023 arrived. I started at the Cascade Motel. Full circle, back where it began. Room 7 had been demolished, but the coordinates remained. I set up at the exact location, GPS confirmed. At 11:47 p.m., I began recording, played the 2003 footage of Holbrook, created the 2-layer synchronization, felt the room resonate, even though no room existed anymore. The anchor was still there, temporal, not physical. Through my camera, I could see them, 47 people, suspended in overlap, watching me record. "It's happening," Holbrook said, his voice echoing from 2003. "I can feel it. The pattern is weakening." "Not yet," I said. 20 years. When someone plays this in 2043, you'll be free." "We'll wait. We've waited this long." I finished recording, sealed the evidence, moved to the next location, Oregon, room 7 of the Timberline Motel. Still operating, but the manager let me have access after I showed my credentials. Same process, 11:47 p.m., recording. Synchronization. Different voices this time. 32 people trapped here, going back to 1923. They thanked me, asked questions I couldn't answer, begged me to hurry, to not make them wait. I promised I'd do what I could. Nevada. The oldest site. Silas Kern's motel. Still standing after 131 years. This location felt different, stronger. More people trapped, 63 according to the voices I heard, and something else, a presence, not human, not temporal. The entity itself, aware I was interfering with its anchors. It didn't speak, didn't threaten, but I felt its attention, cold and vast, studying me like I was a curious anomaly. I finished recording quickly, left before the attention intensified. Later, I contacted the others. All 12 sites had been documented. 12 recordings, 12 second-layer synchronizations. All we could do now was wait. store the evidence, ensure it survived 20 years, and hope someone in 2043 found all 12 recordings and played them simultaneously. It was a long shot. Required coordination we couldn't guarantee. Required belief in phenomena most people would dismiss. But it was our only option. I archived my recordings, stored them in 3 separate locations with instructions to open in 2043. Then I returned to my normal life. Fraud cases in Denver, routine work, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I'd seen beyond normal time, talked to people trapped in impossible places, felt the attention of an intelligence that regarded our entire timeline as navigable space, and I knew, with certainty I couldn't prove, that in 2043 the pattern would either break or cascade. Freedom for hundreds of trapped people, or collapse of the entire anchor network, and whatever consequences that brought. Years passed. My career stabilized. I stopped filing impossible reports, focused on normal cases, got promoted, transferred back to Seattle, worked my way toward retirement. But I never forgot. Kept private documentation, monitored the 12 sites when I could, watching for accelerating phenomena. And in November 2043, I'll be 70 years old. Retired, hopefully alive. I'll travel to all 12 sites, make sure the recordings are found, make sure they're played at 11:47 p.m. on November 17th. Make sure the synchronization completes. Whether it works or fails, I'll be there to see it, because this is my responsibility now, my mission. The one case I'll never close until it's finished. Room 7, always Room 7, in 12 locations across the West. Temporal anchors wait. People trapped in overlap count down years until freedom. An entity from outside our timeline uses motel rooms to navigate our reality. And somewhere in 2043, someone will play my recordings and complete the pattern. I hope it works. I hope everyone trapped is freed. I hope the anchor network collapses and the entity loses its navigation points. But if it doesn't work, if the synchronization fails, if the anchors strengthen instead of collapse, then I've spent 40 years preparing for nothing, and the pattern will continue. Room 7, forever.